Hello and welcome to a special edition of Hex Therapy Pulse Therapy Live with Manny Allen and Blaze Makes Music.
Hello, how is everybody?
So I know a lot of people have been looking forward to this episode, and the Joker sends his regrets that he's feeling under the weather right now. And so Blaze and I will be having all kinds of psychological discussions tonight.
We will definitely be doing our best to cook your noodle, that's for sure.
That's right. Let's do it. So it's been a while since our last stream, and I know I really enjoyed speaking with you and Nerd Girl last time. So how have you been since then?
Yeah, been doing well, Maddie. Just enjoying the ride of Hex since then. I know we've pretty much I think probably done like a 3 or a 4x in price since that
Yes.
last stream, and that was only about a month ago. So
Yeah.
I've had a couple of really excited days in there. Just yeah, like I said, just really enjoying the ride. So it's been a great little while. How about you? How have you been going?
Yeah. Staying busy planning the first mass Hex meetup here. Um, that's going to take place in Las Vegas in just 19 days. So,
That's
um,
amazing. I'm so sad that I won't be able to come. But I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys get up to over there. I think it's going to be a wild time. Like, did you say you've got like it's more than like 100 people coming at
yeah.
this stage? Wow.
Um, Over 180 people have bought tickets so far.
Wow. That's amazing. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Well done.
So,
Well done. Yeah.
and thanks to T Money and Discourse Syndicate and everybody else who's been backing the initiative to do this big meetup. And I think it's going to be a blast. I can't wait until we do the first international Hex meetup, um, which is probably going to be coming later in 2021 or 2022.
Yes, I'm extremely excited about that, and as soon as that's possible, I'll be the first one on a plane. That's for sure.
Right on. And of course, this is TVPG. It's rated for psychology gang. So we got our little symbol up there now.
Love it. Very, very nice.
Thanks to Wake Dog, who says, I can't sacrifice Hex yet, but I can sacrifice my USD to the Hex Pulse Chain Therapy Black Hole. All right. Well, thank you.
All right. Very nice. Tears of Hex haters. Says it all, right?
Tastes pretty good.
I love it. Um,
So, yeah, I know that there's a number of topics tonight that we're wanting to get into that are all related. Where's a good place to start?
oh, I don't know. I mean, I guess obviously, Pulse Chain is always, on topic these days. Everybody's like eagerly anticipating this sacrifice phase, and everybody's, excited to move into this next phase of the Hex journey. So I was thinking a little bit about maybe picking up on something Dollar Cost Crypto had said on one of his streams recently, just around Pulse Chain and some of the antics that are likely to kind of play out when Pulse Chain first launches, especially given that we'll be duplicating the entire Ethereum system state. So that means, the whole variety of tokens built on Ethereum, minus a couple of copycat coins, will be duplicated on Pulse. Um, and he did say something that I found pretty funny when he said, I don't think the Hexicans are prepared for the level of shitcoinery that's going to go
Ah,
down.
yes.
um, and just kind of the explosion of different tokens and different coins that we're all going to be exposed to during this launch phase. And I guess I just wanted to talk a little bit about, how do we navigate this? How do we make sure we don't get wrecked in the process? How do
Mm.
we identify, what's potentially not going to be in our best financial interests? What's potentially something that could be scammy that we'd want to avoid? And maybe just, yeah, maybe have a chat, Maddie, about how you're planning to, navigate this, and what you're planning to do really to keep yourself on track as Pulse Chain launches.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's going to be fascinating from a psychological perspective to see what behavior emerges from yet another new system, right? So Hex
Yeah.
is a system that well, it's a system of smart contracts that allows people to lock their money, sending money to their future selves, in effect. And that's a system that has proven to have a lot of emergent psychological properties, things that weren't necessarily predicted by the creator, and in fact have had a positive spin on people's lives. Now,
Mm-hmm.
Pulse as well will be somewhat of a really new environment because we haven't ever lived in a world where it was 2021 and there were low fees, right?
Yeah.
For any prolonged period of time. And by low fees, I mean it only costs a penny to make a transaction, if that, on the blockchain. And so I really think that the space has evolved in the past. Even, well, it was last summer, right? The last time fees were so low, as they could be on the Pulse network. And so I think I think that there will be a lot of interesting behavior going on there.
Mm-hmm.
And I would tend to agree with you and dollar cost crypto and others who are predicting massive shitcoinery, um, right? Because there's going to be incentive for everybody to build and to port over to the Pulse network, um, whether they believe in it or not. And so I think that there are a lot of different um, categories of people, including scammers, who will be on there.
Yes. Yeah.
What else do you anticipate?
Uh, I mean, I think like on the positive side of things, I think there's going to be a lot of, space for innovation and, you know, with this Hexagon community that we have, the community has a lot of integrity. They know how, I think a lot of us do know how to, see through scams and misdirection and situations like that could arise. And so I think with a community that's strong, that has each other's back, and is really looking out for the well-being of the Hex project, overall, I think there could be some wonderful opportunities for innovation and for experimentation and for, further wealth building as well. So, I know recently on the Pulse chat, one of the pinned messages up there from Richard is around this concept of potentially doing some liquidity mining. So this is very speculative at the moment, but there was a little bit of an allusion to potentially even creating some additional supply of some of these ERC20s, like key ones that we think probably align with the Hex vision. And then, people who are, early adopters of the Pulse chain will be given the opportunity to mine some of this additional liquidity. So I'm like really excited about opportunities like that. I think that could be really, really cool. And so I see a lot of positive opportunities there. But yes, exactly as you said, there's going to be and I think this is what I'm trying to draw attention to at the moment, is that aside from Hexicans, who we all, know, love, and trust, and we know are long-term minded, there are going to be these other categories of people involved as well, some of whom may be scammers, some of whom may be there for just a quick short-term pump and dump, some of whom are just trying to, flip and create a quick buck, and then move off the system. And so I think it's just about having that balance in mind. So, seeing the opportunity, but just being aware of, exactly what Wake Dog is saying is, the potential that there could be, what's known as a rug pull. So, projects pulling liquidity, for example, and things like this could occur, just to be realistic about it. And so my big goal here is just to make sure that Hexicans come through this with their eye on the prize. We know that Hex is the diamond. We know that it is the store of value. It is what we're going to be holding for the next 15 plus years. And there's going to be a lot of other really shiny, exciting things going on. And I just think it's important to keep a balanced point of view whenever you're sort of assessing putting finances into these other projects.
Yes, absolutely. And another thing that the Pulse chain will do is it will shed light on and prove to some extent the level of corruption that has occurred within Binance and with other centralized exchanges that stand actually to benefit from rug pulls themselves, because they are asking for $2 million to even list coins in the first place.
Yeah.
Then other times they want 10 or 20% of the supply, so that when people start buying into it, the exchanges got liquidity. But really what that means is they have plenty of tokens to sell to people that they got for free. So that's another exploitative practice, instead of allowing true price discovery and the free market to operate. Then they're making sure to make their money first, and that takes away from other people. And so when we look at Hex's launch in particular, there's a lot of history there that provides an origin story that, while very complex and difficult to understand, proves how fair and unique the project is. Hex launched on a decentralized exchange, whereas the Binance Smart Chain is very centralized in nature. And so I can't wait to see what's going to happen in the real world, where the exchange itself doesn't benefit from shitcoinery.
Yes. And I think that's exactly right what you're saying. We don't, we're not going to be coming into this with a biased and exploitative incentive structure. If something is going to succeed on Pulse, it's going to succeed because it has merits, and because it's actually of some use and benefit for the communities that are using those tokens. And so I think there are, far fewer risks on, Pulse chain versus particularly something like BSC. And that, I think that's a comforting thought to know as well, is that really the things that are genuine are likely to have a really large degree of success on Pulse. And I think some of those communities that are on Ethereum that maybe have been bogged down by these crazy gas fees and the S load costs and so forth really should be considering Pulse as an alternative, as a way to support their project, and to look at all of the benefits that they could have from having transactions at a cost that is actually sustainable and actually could work. You know what I mean?
Another question is, how will projects get known on the Pulse chain, whether they're scams or not? How will they promote themselves, right? And what we see in the centralized side of cryptocurrency is market gatekeepers such as CoinMarketCap and CoinGecko that have risen to prominence, and even others. They control the lists that people look at, when they're trying to do their own research. They manipulate these lists based on their own opinions, and then that uh, is connected as well to the YouTubers, the most popular crypto YouTubers. They take money from centralized exchanges and from scams, sites that encourage people to leverage trade, which is not a smart way to get rich. It's a way to get wrecked. And so I think that we're going to continue to keep exposing the difference between what real crypto is, being decentralized, not being on a centralized exchange, not being gatekept by a list keeper, but then also who's going to promote the scams if the centralized exchange isn't promoting it.
Yes.
If these list makers are trying to gatekeep against Pulse, then they're really in trouble, because the free market might make its way in to Pulse without them.
Yes. Absolutely, absolutely, and again, that's a very comforting thought. Just knowing that those bad actors who have enabled so many scams on other chains, they're just not going to be, given the time of day when it comes to Pulse chains. So I think that's a really, really good point, Maddie. And my most optimistic vision for Pulse is that it does become what crypto was supposed to be, right? Like a decentralized, truly decentralized environment with a free market that's in operation, without censorship, without gatekeepers. When you look at what some of the larger coins in crypto have devolved into, I'm thinking particularly at the moment of Bitcoin, that now seems to be completely reliant on institutions purchasing large quantities of Bitcoin in order for the price to be supported, and in order for it to be a viable store of value. And we're seeing how much of an impact a couple of tweets from a billionaire can make on Bitcoin. We're seeing the impact of these gatekeepers throughout really the crypto space. And it's just funny to see what crypto has, a lot of crypto, and this isn't to bag on all of the projects. There are so many, wonderful projects, but there are also just a lot of projects that have arisen that really shouldn't have, that are really centralized, that are really benefiting from, like I said, money that is not operating in a free market type of mechanism. And my hope, like I was saying earlier, is that Pulse will be able to really represent that, at least much more closely, that ideal that we're all looking for in crypto, a place that a market can be free, can actually be decentralized, and we can go about having our consensual, voluntary interactions with each other, without these kind of monoliths, the shadow of them, over the whole enterprise. So I'm really looking forward to that when it comes to Pulse as well.
Decentralized exchanges weren't invented when Ethereum came out. And so much of the volume of Ethereum and every other cryptocurrency in the world, they've been traded on centralized exchanges. So there are records about who has the coins, and, and for governments and, bad actors to get a hold of even, right? We've seen lots of data leaks. And that's kind of part of the point of crypto is to have freedom from centralized exchanges. And so I think it's going to be fascinating actually to see whether any centralized actors realize how screwed they are and actually buy in at the end of their launch phase. Like
that would be sweet revenge. Yeah, it'd be awesome.
But it might be their way to hedge their bets. Because think about if you're Binance and you didn't copy the system state, you copied the Ethereum chain,
Yeah.
but you didn't copy the system state, or
Yeah.
your, what's the other one, Matic, or I mean, there have been lots of projects that have copied Ethereum. Oh, Tron was the other one that didn't take the system state. Richard's
Yeah.
taking the system state. And
Mm-hmm.
so, if you're Binance and you've got billions and billions and billions of dollars, are you going to hedge your bets and put a few million into Pulse? Or are you going to continue to be in denial and think that, you're going to stay in control?
It's a really good question, and that will definitely be a really interesting behavior to watch as well. When do people capitulate and finally recognize that these behaviors that they've been engaging in they're just not going to fly. Eventually, when you're wielding power in a corrupt way, eventually people reject this. They say no to it. And free markets are a really great way of identifying when people don't agree with behaviors that certain groups of people are engaging in. And if you finally get that message, it had actually been an amazing thing for these entities to kind of recognize, hey, if we continue to engage in this behavior, we actually go bankrupt. We actually can't turn a profit anymore. Therefore, we're actually going to have to improve what we're doing, look at reality, and change our behavior in a positive direction. That would be amazing. I mean, the cynical part of me thinks about what that will be like if they involve themselves in Pulse Chain, if there'll be any sort of negative costs to having these people involved. But this is the beauty of a free market. It will emerge naturally, I think, as all of the actors engage with each other on Pulse Chain. But definitely, from what I can see, it's going to be an amazing environment for freedom and for people engaging with the system the way that they choose to.
I've been described as having toxic positivity as part of my personality. And, so even if I point out something that's wrong with the world, I usually have a positive take on it. I think that we're led to believe that we're in a free market now, but I think that the market is actually highly rigged and has a lot of AI and super intelligence and psychopaths running the world. And part of that is, proven in a number of ways. But the point is that they underestimated Hex because Hex, again, has traded on decentralized exchanges, whereas the rest of crypto seems to, the Hex was the number one performing crypto of 2020. It's still doing well, hasn't died yet, has more people staked for longer with more value than any other crypto. So we know that the community is still going to care 14 years from now about it. You can't say the same for Bitcoin. Even Elon Musk, somebody who owned a good percentage of Bitcoin, he changed his mind about it in less than a year. And so watching kind of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies go in the wrong direction of centralization, not updating themselves, not having people who are showing critical thinking. But then also when we look at the incentives of the people who are streaming, have you noticed that people in Hex aren't taking bribes from advertisers as much as other cryptos?
I have noticed that, Maddie. Interesting that you bring that up. Why do you think that is?
I'm not. I mean, it could have something to do with this price appreciation and APY that we're earning, and I think that kind of brings us to one of our topics here: of is Hex a scam? And how would we know? And what types of things have been going on in the world of judging scams and talking about them?
So I'm definitely not the world's expert on this, definitely one thing that I look for is I actually do look for behaviors of influencers. So certainly when it comes to a smaller coin, for example, a lot of these influencers will load up on the coin, then they'll start promoting it to their audience, and then they'll dump it on their heads,
That's
basically.
right.
And it's horrific. Like it's I'm not even sure what to call it. That's pretty sociopathic, really. Like there's just no empathy
I
there,
I
and
I
really
got
just this.
physically sick by watching BitBoy for like a minute, 60 seconds. I was ready to puke up my meal because I had not watched him, and
It's
I went to his
yeah,
show, and it was like the whole thing was an infomercial for a coin
yeah.
that I had never heard of. He never presented any critical thinking or any reason to get it other than saying a bunch of keywords.
It's so disappointing. Yeah, when you actually spend a bit of time watching it, you're like, oh my gosh, it's worse than I even expected it to be.
Yes. Yeah.
Like it's so
Yeah.
much worse, right? It just sucks. So yeah, definitely that's one of the behaviors I look for. But like what's really interesting to me at the moment is witnessing how this is even happening in Bitcoin. Like this conference that's going on at the moment. Have you seen that clip of Max Kaiser coming out on the stage, just yelling about Elon Musk? He
I haven't
basically
seen
comes
it
out.
yet. No.
Yeah, he basically it's sad. It's really sad. So he basically comes out on stage. He yells about Elon Musk. I can't remember exactly what he says. Like I think he basically just says, fuck Elon Musk. And then he just starts yelling at the crowd, like, we're not selling. And there's all this like techno music playing and lights flashing, and it just looks like an awful, like multi-level marketing circus. Like it's almost embarrassing at this point. So I almost feel like Bitcoin itself isn't even totally immune to this influencer problem that we have anymore. But certainly that is one of the behaviors to look for with small coins. Just kind of watching these patterns of when are the influencers really promoting something, and then what's happening to the price directly after that. Can you see a direct link between them pumping it and then dumping on their audience's heads? And that's certainly one situation that I would avoid. What about you, Maddie? Do you have criteria that you use, or certain logic that you might apply to a project to give you some good data about whether this could be a scam or whether this is a safe investment for you to be making?
Yeah, there are so many associations that I have with this question and topic. I think that for me, I don't really look around for other coins anymore
Yeah.
because I'm already in a committed 15-year relationship with one.
You got
And
a ring on that finger, Maddie,
that's right. Yeah.
or a
Um,
hexagon on your finger.
That's right. And so, with the amount of time that I'm investing in trying to build the community and trying to build some brands around hex therapy and, these different initiatives, I would say that I haven't really given it too much thought. But in the past, it was a dilemma that I faced. And I,
Mm,
was mistakenly thinking that the more articles that I read about cryptocurrency, the more informed and educated I would be about it, until I started hearing Richard Hart speak
yeah.
and speaking truth to power and seeing the community really make way more sense than anything else. And then I've been on the other side of the coin where we were trying to promote the first Hex conference, and articles were being rejected. It turns out that all of the sources I used to get articles from don't allow articles to be written if they aren't paid sponsorships or something. So
Wow.
that really, you know, uh, I guess like took me out of my sheltered, environment and taught me a thing about how crypto really works. Now, for me, it's really important, and something I do spend time thinking about is how do I not become one of those people? Because I
Mm,
believe in the, really in the psychology of this whole space. I believe that probably there are a lot of people who started off with good intentions and then they ended up in a bad environment. And so the bad environment is what made them bad actors, not
right.
them starting off bad. Now, that
Yeah.
doesn't count for psychopaths. Psychopaths are bad from the beginning. Um,
Yeah.
but for all the other people, so for me, I know I'm not a psychopath. Other people can,
Pretty
decide
sure you're
that for
not. Yeah.
themselves. But so that's kind of crossed off my list of things to check. But so really, what do I look for? I would say in myself, I look for being able to be honest really about my holdings and everything. So I've told people, I've got 1 to 5% of my hex liquid,
Hmm.
and so that way, I'm planning on living in between 1 and 5% of my life in the next year. So that
Yep.
kind of maps out perfectly. And then,
Cool.
if things change, I guess, I'll have to let the Hex community know or something. But I already feel guilty if I do something and then, I don't share it with everybody. So I guess I'm good.
I look, I definitely agree with that, and that that transparency I think is really important, and it also might be that I'm not necessarily an expert in knowing for sure if something is a scam. There's obviously suspicions that I'll have about certain projects and so forth, but I think the experience with Hex has really helped me to identify when something is not a scam. And
Good
there are a
point.
lot of I think moments that I've been through on my Hex journey that really helped me to identify when something is not a scam and it is in fact just being smeared by people who are corrupt. And probably the first point there would be simply that the information that is being almost like monolithically presented by the crypto sphere, suggesting that Hex is a scam, is completely and utterly false. All of the information that they're providing does not accord with the Hex code itself. It doesn't accord with what the mechanics are of the token. It doesn't accord with how the interest is paid. For example, there were so many claims that there's no possible way that Hex could pay out the interest that it's claiming. Therefore it's a Ponzi, and there were so many claims like this. And it just takes a simple read through of, well, the code could be somewhat complex for some people, but just simply kind of looking at the mechanics of how Hex works, how the inflation rate works, what percentage of people are staking, and just doing some simple maths, some quick maths, uh, and there's literally no conceivable way that Hex cannot pay out what it promises to pay out.
Mhm.
It's just a simple fact of the way that the token is designed. So just just glaring inconsistencies like that, immediately that got me curious. So I was like, well, then why are all these people lying about it? Why are they presenting misinformation? And that kind of led me down quite a big rabbit hole around just the general corruption of the media in the space, and the relationships between influencers and exchanges and all of these kind of perverse incentives that are present. And that I think was a really key factor in me recognizing Hex is not a scam. Here's what people are saying, here are the facts, they're not the same. And when you have that, then you can kind of start to recognize when something actually is just a smear rather than rooted in reality. So that's certainly one thing. um, what about you, Maddie? Do you, I guess, have any ways that you recognize, that helps you to really understand that Hex, it just isn't a scam. It's just not what these people are claiming it is.
So yeah, I'm glad that you brought up that dynamic because I think that um, I have also really been wondering about the public perception and the marketing tactics that are used with Hex. In some cases, they're highly effective, like for all the people that are here, and all the people who aren't here. We're not exactly sure what went wrong, but we're interested now that it seems like we're well taken care of within the Hex space. Now we have time to go back and figure out why others got left behind. And of course, this is something that I am liking, that I'm obsessed with, or that I'm like, that I'm working hard on, you could say. And so just to dive into some specifics. So, so I think it's a combination, right? So it's a combination of, there are some people who are paid liars.
Mm-hmm.
There are some people who understand Hex as an actual threat. And so they're trying to, so there's the people who kind of are just lying in general because they didn't do their homework. There's people who are lying because they do realize what it is. And then there's probably another group of people that really are using these filters. For example, if a project promises a high percentage of return, then it's a scam. And that's what it says on the Securities and Exchange Commission website. They have a website that I visited today just to kind of explore the topic, which is why it's so interesting that you and I both were kind of preparing for the same topics, even though we didn't know it. The title of the stream wasn't how to detect scams, how to market Hex, how to understand any of that part of things. But I think that that's a really important topic. And so, like you already said, Hex isn't promising 40% APY for those who lock for 5 years in United States dollars or in any other fiat currency that Hex can't deliver on. There's, from what I've heard, a copy of Hex that promises to pay out ETH or something like that. And it doesn't mint ETH. It doesn't mine ETH. It's a scam. And so for Hex to promise to pay out Hex, and for it to be capable of doing so from a technical perspective, is a really important distinction. And then I take it one level deeper, and people have heard me say before that it might stand to benefit the goal of making new whales if Hex was presented like a scam. So, for example, Richard Hart, whether it's because of his stroke of genius or because of his random intentions, built a group of people paying attention to him because they liked his self-help videos. And so he helped people to quit drinking, quit smoking, quit gambling, quit day trading. And those people then became his following and were very thankful and believed in him because they changed it, because he changed their lives, right? And so then Richard presents, his finished product, Hex, and it, parts of the marketing sound scammy, but he knows that there's this group of people that's interested in self-improvement that's going to believe him no matter how he markets it. And it just so happens that all the whales and centralized exchanges totally stay away from it when all the people who are watching hours and hundreds of hours of live streams of Richard are going all in or going in a little bit, right? And it didn't take much for people who bought into Hex to do really well. And if there were whales in the ecosystem, then we would not have gotten the chart that we have. We would not have minted so many millionaires. And so it's
such a good point. Yeah.
What do you think of my conspiracy theory that Hex is actually designed to look like a scam to people who aren't
savvy enough, perhaps, or curious enough.
Well, to people who are in power right now, many of them may think that Hex is a scam. At first glance, the number one marketing point is Hex pays 40% APY.
Yeah.
Don't tell me anymore. Like, that's it. You know, the name Hex, that means curse. Like, all right, don't tell me anymore. Sounds like a scam.
Sounds sketchy. Yeah, look, I mean, there's definitely, you could say there's some indirect evidence that could in fact be the case, that was part of the strategy from the outset, to make sure that there's a particular type of person who is involved in the project, and really keep out the types of, entities and actors who would likely be bad actors in the system, and not allow for the type of really consistent, reliable price appreciation that everybody in Hex has been enjoying. That's certainly the case. And you can add sorry, go on.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, so like let's imagine that a prospective whale gets past the first test of the marketing. They have a team of quantitative analysis people who read code. This Hex thing doesn't go away month after month, after half a year or a year or something, right? It's been flying under the radar, but not because the price chart keeps going up, even though the interest isn't presented on the price chart. The big payday isn't presented on the price chart. So the price chart is literally lying. It's not telling you how good the price appreciation has been for those real participants. When does that happen? Why would a scam undersell its returns? Okay, maybe it would, but still. So you're a whale. You got this team. You finally are yelling at your team, like, why is this Hex thing? Why is it not gone away? Look into the code. I'm going to pay some people to look into the code. You realize how great it is. You get ready to go hit the buy button, and then you run into a second problem.
Liquidity.
There's low liquidity. So if you want to buy $1 million of Hex, then it's too late. You didn't buy during the adoption amplifier phase. And if you wanted to buy that much at any given time, you would push the price so hard against yourself that you would be at the mercy of everybody who's already in the system.
Yeah.
All the little guys. And that's unacceptable to a whale. Yeah. They would walk away from the deal at that point.
Yeah. It's interesting how that mechanic, like, it's so funny. I actually just think it's hysterical, but it's so funny how that mechanic flips that power imbalance. Like in any other market that you go into, you are at the mercy of the whales. You really, really are. And you can see it happening in Bitcoin at the moment. There's obviously some stuff going on in the background there with large players and their tactics here. But it's really the only thing that you can purchase where the little guy and the person that is willing to take a risk early has really all the power in the system, because you're exactly right. You can't get in with large amounts of money, and the people that currently have significant amounts of funds in Hex are basically just average people who were smart enough to listen to Richard and were brave enough to take a risk. And it's hysterical. It's actually like, it's so funny to me how much of Hex and how much of Richard's strategy just appears to be like this huge troll on crypto in general. And it's like amazing how well it's working. It's so good.
So let's keep going in this thought experiment of what's a whale to do, right? So then the whale is thinking, all right, so this is another sign of a scam, right? Because scams also have low liquidity. But the difference between a scam and Hex in this one isolated data point of liquidity, which doesn't tell you everything you need to know, but in this case, continues possibly to repel the lazy whale. But you've got that whale who just really has something to prove to mommy and daddy or whatever, you know, uh, so they're still trying to understand hex, even though they may have been thrown off the true path multiple times. And so then they're like, okay, well, the liquidity thing is a problem. What do we do next? Well, let's FUD it, right? Let's FUD it. Let's copy it, right? These are other
Yeah.
strategies that the psychopaths and successful people use when they run into a situation where you can't have it. Sorry, you're too late.
Yeah.
You missed out, right?
Yeah.
And so then you're doing those things. Oh, wait a second, that doesn't work either, right? Because people are literally locked up for a number of years. So how much can people really sell? And then
Yes. And on top of that, even if this somehow worked and they were able to shake out some of the hands of people who were holding Hex liquid, you've got the OA. So the OA
yes,
has the most significant percentage of the Hex supply. And so that in and of itself is preventing anybody else from taking that kind of large chunk of ownership that these psychopathic whales would be looking for. So it's kind of perfectly designed to follow your theory, as you're saying, to weed out these entities and individuals. It's best troll in history, gotta say.
yeah. Well, it's it's a breakthrough in economic and market psychology and all this stuff that I think we're interested in. And so if you're a whale, then okay, so the next thing you're gonna try to do probably is to like buy small amounts, right? So like, all right, at least maybe I'll buy some small amounts here and there. Well, I would believe, or I would speculate, that the OA probably not only monitors that, but also stalks and kind of pushes around whales, because that's what we've seen in the staking behavior. At least we don't know who's buying in when, but once it's bought and becomes staked, what we've seen is that there were whales who staked, and the OA staked right before and right after them.
Yeah.
Like, so basically crowding around them,
Yeah.
stalking their stakes. That's a tongue twister, and possibly even stalking their buys.
Yeah.
And so now all of a sudden, there's more competition than you knew that there was going to be. And so really, I think that this is totally an underrated dynamic that people are willing to either buy the scam or not a scam narrative. But if they looked deeper, they would understand that something much more important is going on, because if Richard is successful in making new whales, it might actually disrupt the global financial system, because the strategy that I believe has been used by the people who run the world is they maybe understand now that Bitcoin is an unstoppable technology, but their way to stop it, other than by owning the exchanges, is also by owning all the healthcare and the food production industries in the world. So when you have a monopoly on human attention, on advertising, on agriculture, on medicine, then it doesn't matter if the population switches their money, because you still have all the stuff. And if you have all the stuff, then you can get all the new money.
Yeah. But it's interesting as well, though, because I genuinely believe that all of those other monopolies have been enabled initially by the monopoly on information and media. I think that has been the central tool that they've used to kind of manipulate people into the situation that we find ourselves in. And the other thing that Hex does is it has created a situation where there's been like a natural selection for people who can see through false narratives. So you've also got this group of people who are quite immune to the tactics that these groups of people really deploy in order to control the political and economic landscape of the world. And so that is, if you're going to be waging like because basically this like information monopoly that they hold is a type of psychological warfare. And
Yes.
in order for us to break free of this, we're going to need to utilize a form of like asymmetrical psychological warfare.
Yes.
We're going to have to be smarter. We're going to have to be smarter than they are, and we're going to have to really leverage a small pocket of the population. And so we actually have right here, right now, like the perfect group of people who have self-selected to be part of this enterprise. And these are all just like insights that are hitting me now as I'm speaking with you, Maddie. So thank you for kind of triggering this in me. But this, exactly like you're saying, I think this could really disrupt just way more than crypto, like much more than I think people are aware of, perhaps at this moment in time.
And I think even if they can shut down any influencers or channels or anything like that, just getting the information out to people, I think will change, the possible outcome of the future of humanity, because what I see and what I would love your feedback on is that by staking, this changes human behavior in a couple ways. It allows you to no longer have to be strong with your savings plan. So normally, if you have physical dollars, you need to constantly be inhibiting yourself from spending the money, and any variability that you have in your impulsivity or in your mood can cause you to fall into all these traps of self-medicating, of addiction, of just even totally positive manic thinking, stuff like that. There's lots of ways, to blow your paycheck or to blow your savings. And this happens to people all the time, no matter what their preparation or training is. With Hex, with these types of, this type of staking that is, it's non-reversible. It allows people, it's like, stop worrying so much about sabotaging yourself, and you're really sending money to your future self. Now that creates an incentive for you to work harder to build the community, and to not have to work as hard on, not messing up. Maybe you could put that in better words, or tell me what you think of that.
Look, yeah, definitely. I mean, I just think it just has set up a situation where our interests are aligned properly. Our incentives are aligned, and we're going to, all of us are going to benefit in reality far more from the success of Hex than probably many of the other pursuits we may have followed in our lives as well. That's not to say that there isn't other valuable things that we should be doing. And of course, I think it's very important that we do other valuable things in the world. But we are very, I think, acutely aware that how much this thing can explode, how much it can really go, and the type of wealth that's on the line here. And I think if we all really get on the same page with that, the system is designed to kind of put us on the same page with that as well, by helping us to make a commitment to the system, and it's kind of a commitment to each other as well, to to push this thing forward, and really, be that group of people who makes that asymmetrical impact, that we were speaking about earlier, on the way that things are run. And why not us? Why not us? I think we're in the perfect situation with the perfect tool, and I think at that very base level, we're at the very least economically aligned here. So let's do it.
Yeah, I'm pumped up by this line of thinking and this idea that we can basically not only select the right type of people to benefit from this new technology that could make people very wealthy and change some of the perverse power structures in the world, but also this idea that we might even be able to change people's behavior to make the world a better place. And individuals, I believe, who do things that are bad for the world, I think in many cases, the majority of cases, it's because they're a product of a bad monetary environment. And so,
yeah, that's actually something I've been thinking about this week as well. And something I was thinking about bringing up today is how important it is to construct the correct, or to construct rational environments for people to engage with. I think a lot of the disorder that we confront in the world is, at least to some degree, a product of the fact that you are in a very illogical situation, really, when it comes down to it, when you think about it, in economic terms, because of the fact of inflation, because of the fact of your currency constantly losing value. And so this puts, everybody who's not kind of in a top position, kind of controlling all of this, it puts everybody else in a situation where they must essentially behave irrationally, because you're working to try to build up this wealth and to better your life and to make plans for the future. But the whole time you're doing this, the money is being eroded. You're losing value, every single day. And particularly last year, I know Wales Only has shown at so many different charts of what's happened to the money supply over the last year. It's just it's just basically straight up in 2020. And so it's kind of like people are going out, they're digging a hole, and then they're being forced to fill it back up again over and over and over again. And that is like a recipe for just creating disorder in really significant parts of the population.
So I'll do another thought experiment here and pretend to be somebody who controls the US economy. And I'll explain to you,
Matty.
because we're in a back room at the Fed, or we're in the basement of JP Morgan, or wherever we're at, right, where we're allowed to speak freely. So I'll go ahead and make my case to you for why all is well in the world, despite
become the evil Matty. I love it. Right, yeah. Go for it.
So well, it actually makes perfect sense to have inflation, because that keeps the smart, rich people motivated, the people who are the most productive in society. If we didn't have inflation, the people who were the most productive in society would have outsized returns, and then they would quit doing whatever they're so good at. And so you would continuously rotate out your best talent, because there are so many people in the world today, and it only takes a small asymmetric return for your best players to rotate out of being motivated, right? And so inflation is a motivational force that's good for the world. Furthermore,
sorry, really I think I might need to vomit. Just give me a second here.
Yeah, take your time. Plenty more where that came from. And so yeah, as it turns out, right, this is crucial for people to be, you know, for their motivation, but also, thankfully, now we have technology to create abundance. So all the money that gets printed is actually, it's going to be okay, because technology is going to make the cost of things go down just as much as our parabolic money printing. And so it evens out in the end. It's a win-win, right?
Yeah, nah. Hey, no, can't. I mean, sure, that sounds like a wonderful story. And it does sound like there's enough people that agree with the story that it's been functional for this long. But I think it's time for it to end, personally. No, I would.
Yeah, what do you find wrong though with that bulletproof argument there that this is what's best for people?
Well, I mean, I think the simple fact that this inflation that you're talking about as a motivational factor, first and foremost, it only benefits a small portion of people, and these people are certainly not the best and brightest and most productive. They're just the most deceptive. And they have managed to create structures that siphon off this inflation to benefit themselves at the cost of 99.9% of the people on the planet. And call me crazy, but that sounds like a pretty immoral situation to be dealing with.
So most people in the world don't have any savings, and so they're not being harmed. It's only the people who have the most savings that are getting penalized 5% a year if they don't invest their money. If they hold liquid cash, then they pay inflation. Otherwise, they're motivated to put their capital to work, and that creates jobs. It creates technological innovation that decreases the price of goods and services, and that's what allows to pay for the motivation. It continues the cycle. So what's wrong with that?
Yes, but Evil Maddie, why don't they have any savings? What's the reason they don't have any savings? Are they just too dumb to create savings? Are they just cattle who have no logic or reason? Is that the reason they have no savings, or could there be some other factor involved here?
Well, yeah, I'm glad you asked. And, as a part of the JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, shadow banking superpowers, we decided to go ahead and give a couple guys a Nobel Prize in economics, because they helped to educate the world and make this discovery that people are in fact dumb with their savings. And luckily these guys didn't come up with any solution for that. So I guess we just give them a Nobel Prize for pointing that out. But this is what allows us to create a good rationale to introduce another part of the system, which is the pension plans that can't fail. So that way it causes people to automatically save through paying higher taxes. So to have Social Security and to have social welfare programs, this helps people who are sick, disabled, and everybody who's terrible at saving, which is the majority of people. It will do the saving for them. Isn't that great?
And that does sound great in evil psychopath land. So my first concern here is the fact that these pension systems, they seem to be bankrupt, Evil Maddie. They do appear to be collapsing in on themselves.
Well, no, the numbers,
for a number of reasons.
As long as we have 7% growth forever without any downturns, then it'll be fine.
I see. I mean, I think there are a number of impediments to that, I'd have to say, at this moment in time. Demographics are one of them. So, I mean, how
but
would
we
you
can
solve-
promise. We can promise that we'll pay 7% returns forever because we control the money printers. So it's not a scam. We can pay out on our promises.
And when you print the extra money, what happens to the money supply?
while it increases, and then technology makes things cheaper, so the prices of everything stays about the same.
Interesting. I mean, from what I've gathered from the evidence I've looked at, the purchasing power of the dollar seems to be decreasing every single year. What do you make of that, Evil Maddie?
I'm glad you pointed that out because we've got a solution for that as well. What we've been doing is exporting inflation to every other country in the world through our trade balances. So what we do is, it goes all the way back to Bretton Woods, which is the name of a resort that all the world leaders met at after World War II. And so we all, we put our special team together and got everybody so drunk they signed an agreement that they didn't understand. And that was, instead of using gold as the world reserve currency, we decided to use the dollar. And that worked out really great for the free world because it allowed us to enforce this policy of having every country, no matter who they are, they would have to trade using the dollar. And so that means that, Canada and France and Australia, if they all want to trade with each other, they have to come buy dollars from us. So when we print more dollars, our citizens won't feel the pinch from that because we will just export our inflation around the world. And then it will look like the other countries aren't working as hard and aren't as smart as we are.
That does sound like a very evil plan. And you are a very evil man, so that does make sense. But I do wonder, how do you enforce the use of this dollar that that everybody is now required to purchase in order to trade?
Music.
How do you make sure they keep doing that?
Music.
Music?
Yeah.
You
Exporting culture, mind control through culture. So
okay.
It's cool to be American and to listen to 90s songs. And so people all around the world, when they go enjoy themselves, which we make sure is a very rare occurrence because of all the inflation that we're exporting around the world, we make sure that they relax and celebrate to some good old 90s jams.
Look, 90s pop was pretty entertaining. I'll give you that much. I did enjoy. I still enjoy some good 90s pop. So look,
That's right.
I'll give you that one, Evil Maddie. Do you think your military has anything to do with this? I mean, is there any kind of wars or threat of wars or arms that are involved in this mind control that you speak of?
I mean, it's pretty easy to just keep people's minds focused on all kinds of things, switching from emotional topic back and forth so quickly that people don't really know what's going on in the world. And they've been so overexposed and desensitized to negative truths and things that create outrage that people are either angry about everything or feeling guilty, but either way, maybe they have information overload. It doesn't really matter, but it allows us to keep our information systems extremely effective and keep the whole thing pretty greased up.
Look, I've got to say, on one level, I am very impressed with the sheer elegance of this evil plan. I think you've covered a lot of bases. I would have almost said all bases until a little something by the name of Hex came along. And you'll be hearing about it soon enough. Thank you, Evil Maddie. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me peel off this mask and get back to regular Maddie, right?
I was wondering how long that could go for. I was like, we could still be here like 3 hours later.
Yeah,
Because
well, I mean, those are the
Maddie,
big pieces, right? Like those are the big pieces of how they're doing what's right.
Yeah, Evil Maddie, look, to his credit, had an answer for everything. And if you're not informed, like if you're not kind of aware of like what's going on in the background, it could seem pretty convincing. I think a lot of people are convinced. They just think, this is the system and it's fair enough if you work hard and you make the right decisions. You know, you can get wealthy too. There's no impediments. There's no, elite group of people who are disproportionately benefiting from my, resources, whether it be my, intelligence or labor, or what have you. There's no, inflation is just a necessary part of keeping the financial system running. If we didn't do it, everything would collapse. There's definitely, I think, lots of ways to rationalize and um, to make yourself kind of feel comfortable with what's happening. But I definitely do encourage that people, yeah, just really, really understand the mechanics of what's happening. Like something as simple as, like, when you go and get a home loan, when you go to the bank to get a home loan, what actually happens? What is occurring here when you take on this debt? Where is this debt coming from? How is it created? What are the kind of structural factors that allow this process to occur? Is this a good equation to be on the wrong side of? I think these are kind of simple things that I know even myself, I might not have thought about 10 or 12 years ago. I think my first little inkling was probably seeing the Zeitgeist film, and I think there were a lot of things that weren't necessarily completely accurate in that film, but there were certainly some questions that it raised about the financial system
Yeah.
and how it worked. Yeah. And I think it's just good to start there. Good to start with, what's your experience? What are the things that are affecting me? What am I signing up for when I take on a loan? And am I okay with how this is functioning? I think these are important questions to be asking yourself. And if you're not happy with how that's functioning, we're building an alternative where we're creating something else that, rather than having a small number of people benefiting from the inflation of a currency, anybody in Hex can benefit from the inflation. You just got to be willing to stake. Instead of having all these middlemen and banks, disproportionately benefiting from the way the system is running, you as an individual who's willing to make a commitment and to lock some funds, you're the one who is benefiting from the inflation of the currency of Hex. And that is a very disruptive idea. I think it's world changing. And I think that, I think that if you don't know much about Hex yet, I definitely encourage you to keep educating yourself, to keep looking into it, to keep kind of moving beyond any of the narratives you might have seen, because there is a diamond behind all of that.
I think that if I'm switching to put on my positivity hat or my work, good
I'm gonna
side
I'm
instead
gonna
of my
miss
evil
Evil
side.
Matty. He was a
Well,
trip.
yeah, we may have an appearance from time to time, but it'll have to be clearly marked because we already had somebody come in halfway through and was really confused for a while until the stream ended. But
I think maybe we need to give you some, like, I don't know, like
yes, yeah,
Superman glasses or something,
that's
or
right.
like
Yeah,
an evil cape. I don't know. We'll think of
yes,
something.
absolutely. And so I think some of the hope here is that if we really do have a system that isn't going to fail the normal ways by having whales buy into it. Because if you own everything in the world, it's really easy to just, if something new comes along, you just buy that.
Yeah.
And you coerce it the same way you normally would. So we went over earlier in the program how, people might not be able to get into Hex if they have a lot of money. And so that's one way that Hex doesn't fail in the same ways that Bitcoin has failed, because people can just buy in with billions of dollars. And now how decentralized is it really? How world changing is it? So, but if we think about how governments are comprised of people who have their own interests as well. And so if it's possible, if it's not possible to get the highest layer of psychopaths to buy in last, which they may never do, if we keep going down the power chain, at some point the chain's going to break and people are going to say, yeah, I'm like, I'm the 20,000th most powerful person in the world. And like, I am going to buy some hex because the guy above me isn't doing it and the guy below me already did. So, yeah, and then the next guy up the chain is kind of like, well, I don't want to be the last guy to like not buy hex and lose all my power. So, so there may be some sort of incentive structure or psychological phenomenon within people to really dismantle the, the old legacy system of corrupt power. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's possible, and I think also just going back to what you were talking about earlier in terms of the power of hex to actually change behavior. It'd be interesting to see how far we can push that as well, how far up that chain we can go, because you may actually find yourself in a situation at some point in the not too distant future where there is a significant portion of the population is now involved in hex, is now involved in, a money that actually rewards you for doing the right thing and holding long term and planning for the future and doing those rational things, those things that aren't dig a hole and then fill it back up, that incentivize, the proper things that actually build wealth in a population of people. And it may be that, no matter how psychopathic you are, you're just forced to now engage in a system properly, just because there's enough kind of a critical mass of people involved in it, and so that behavior change, we've noticed a significant behavior change in ourselves as like, non-psychopathic people. I wonder, like I was saying, I wonder how far we can push that, and at what point these people are just forced to change what they're doing.
We're going to make them cry on our couch and tell us all their feelings that they didn't know that they could have. And so that is one possibility, is that people could join Hex for the wrong reasons and become better people, right? And that's unique. And so here's the catch, though. I think if we want more people to adopt Hex, we're going to need to dumb it down. And so I don't know if I've spoken, I haven't spoken to you since I retired from counseling and therapy.
Hey, wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. I am doing this at a personal cost to myself, because I could have kept earning a paycheck and continued to accumulate Hex and let somebody else do the work that I could have done, right? But instead, I said, well, I've been the beneficiary of, an increased, enough money, let's just say enough money to take care of me for 6 months. So why don't I take 6 months here and commit myself and my time to Hex, put all my energy into trying to solve some real problems that we have in our adoption. And so I
love that. That's really
cool.
I
hope that this will, work out, right? But I think that there's a strong possibility that through pumping my own bag, that I could have a sustainable lifestyle and hopefully set a good kind of example for, if you're going to quit your job and go full-time crypto, you better be super productive while you're doing it, and that sort of thing.
Yeah. And exactly, have the right incentives, because this isn't like, you quitting, doing a pump and dump, bagging some money and then running off to Mexico or something. This is like, okay, if I sit here and I focus and I put energy into this product and this network that I'm a part of, I could actually create a sustainable lifestyle where, you know, my interest generates, you know, enough income for me to not work and to be
Yes.
comfortable. And so again, your incentive structure, it, it's so much more positive here because you're thinking about how can I create a long-term lifestyle rather than how can I just, you know, bag some cash and run, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I
It's a
mean,
completely different thing.
I sold my Ethereum, and that gives me enough money to see what happens
Yeah.
but I don't have to be selling trading courses. I don't have to be charging
Yep.
fees. I don't have to
Yep.
be extracting value from my audience, which puts me in a really good position. And so
Yeah.
I would love to kind of pick your brain about some crazy theories I have about the
Oh,
psychology of Hex and onboarding.
I'd love to hear it. Go for it.
Um, but if that's a point that we're building up to, maybe we could first talk a little bit more about a little conversation that we both are privy to between a certain Lex Friedman and a certain Vitalik, because this is maybe going to help us understand the marketing and the psychology of onboarding to Hex, to understand what their conversation was about how to judge a scam versus a legitimate project.
Yeah, sure. Go for it. I'm all
So,
ears.
um, so I didn't tell you when we were talking for like a minute or two before the stream, but I also saw that interview that you saw, and you
Awesome.
had taken some good notes, or you had
Yeah,
crystallized
got it.
some information from that. What
Yeah.
did you take from their discussion about what is a scam?
So, I probably wasn't so focused on that. There was another topic that I was focusing more on, which had more to do with, hey Johnny, um, which had more to do with like the Sens Foundation and longevity and that side of things. So I don't
Ooh,
know
let's
that
talk
I
about that too.
yeah, I definitely want to do that whenever the moment seems right. So I didn't have so much information crystallized about how they were thinking about scams. Like, I mean, I definitely know that in general, you know, Vitalik is the founder of Ethereum, and so he's generally quite positive to, you know, any projects that want to build on it. And he did talk a little bit about his experience with Shiba Coin, and why he chose to, you know, popularize that coin to an extent or promote it, versus, you know, why he hasn't with other coins, and some of the tactics that they implemented that kind of made that more likely. Um, but yeah, I don't exactly remember the
Yeah.
specifics. Yeah,
So the part I remember on Shiba, so Lex was asking because Lex didn't pay attention to Bitcoin for a long time. And he's a smart guy. He learns a lot about technology. He understands artificial intelligence. And so futuristic money, it seems like it would be one of his hobbies, but it wasn't for a lot of years because he didn't see the potential of Bitcoin. And then, just like a whale in our earlier examples, except it seems like Lex is coming from a much more positive, kind-hearted position. He seems like a good guy, and he kind of had this moment where he said, "Wait a second, Bitcoin isn't going away. Bitcoin's popular now. Oh shoot, I need to learn a lot about crypto so that I can figure out what's going on here." And so when he finally started paying attention to the space, what he saw was a big cluster of marketing strategies and schemes.
yeah,
And so he looks at the components of these things and he says, wait a second, everybody's super excited about
yeah,
scams
yeah. I remember that now.
and
Yeah,
everybody's super excited about Bitcoin. They're both attracting smart people. what's the difference here? And so he's asking really astute questions to Vitalik, who has been in crypto since the very beginning and has a lot of interesting insights.
Yeah.
One path that they went down of several was when Lex said, well, what happened with Shiba coin, which, is a meme coin that spun off of Dogecoin. And it turns out that Vitalik had half of the supply of Shiba coin, but he had never bought any. It was gifted to him as a marketing strategy to trick people into thinking that Vitalik supported that coin, when in fact it was forced on him by a dev team. And so the dev team, we're not sure if it was by accident or by design, had sent all of the Shiba coins to Vitalik's cold wallet, which at the time during the 2019 or 2020 lockdown, Vitalik didn't have access to his keys. And so literally he's halfway around the world unable to dump this coin. In the meantime, the coin gets more and more popular because probably of a number of reasons, including they can point and say, look, Vitalik hasn't sold his.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly right. I refresh my memory because I remember he was there was some reason he was more positive towards Shiba than some other coins that have done similar things. Like, was it just the cold wallet aspect, or was there something else that he had liked about the project? I think I might have been sort of half paying attention when he was talking about that part.
Yeah. Well, I don't remember him ever saying why he sold the Shiba coins, other than he gave the money to a charity, which of course he stole from all the people who were investing in that as a way to earn their financial freedom, which I disagree with. So I think he was being strategic in the sense that he didn't want two meme coins in the top 10. And so he was trying to protect the reputation of cryptocurrency as a serious thing. He saw Elon Musk pitting a meme coin versus the number one cryptocurrency. Ethereum is the number two cryptocurrency. So Vitalik is thinking strategically from a kind-hearted developer point of view, saying, oh, shoot, we need to stop this meme takeover of the space.
Right. Yeah. I don't know how I feel about the sale of the coins. Like, I think it's great that he was able to donate to charities. I think that's wonderful. But then, like you said, what has that done to the value of the token for all of the people who are holding it? So, it's a difficult situation, and it's also interesting. I mean, did I see not too long ago that Vitalik had actually sold like a huge percentage of his Ethereum as well, like essentially at the top of our most recent peak?
That may have been what he traded the Shiba for before he so like he had to exit somehow, and there was probably too little liquidity on the USD side of Shiba because nobody ties their liquidity to the US dollar because they want to ride the ride up with Bitcoin and Ethereum. So they make those their dominant trading pairs, and only Hex is is a primary trading pair with the US dollar, because it turns out that we're just fine not riding up or down with Bitcoin and Ethereum at this point.
Yeah, agreed. Oh, I see. So you think it's likely that he's sold his Shiba into ETH and then sold the ETH?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. And so this is, just another example of centralization, right? Because he had 50% of the tokens. So not a good design, people. And then you could say, well, wait a second, doesn't Richard have 95% of the supply of Hex? How's that any different? Well, the difference is that Shiba was not Vitalik's baby. It's not something that he would protect with his life.
Yeah.
It's not part of his legacy. It's a threat to his legacy. For Richard has billions of dollars of Bitcoin and Ethereum and Hex. So why would he destroy his legacy? He doesn't need the money anyway.
Yeah, exactly. The incentive structure is totally different, and even just like the function of what the OA is doing in the system as well. Because like, I mean, you could argue that the OA is in a sense like virtually lending hex to the stakers, because with that percentage of the supply sitting liquid, this allows the stakers to benefit from the inflation while the OA does not. And so there's kind of, in a sense, the OA is kind of losing to inflation while the stakers are benefiting from it. And so
I was
there's
wrong
also...
about that.
Oh, I
was
see.
wrong
Okay,
about that.
go on.
Yeah. So that's one of the cool things about being a nerd and having a TV show on YouTube, is that like there's people with bigger galaxy brains out there who can like reach out and say like, actually, Maddie, like here's the math. And it turns out that while I was explaining it just how you did, that the OA is missing out on inflation. It turns out that the 3.69% inflation comes from the smart contract. And so it seems like anybody who's holding liquid is paying this price, but the OA has such a large percentage of the supply that if the OA staked 90%, it would be taking away its own interest.
I'm trying to get my head around that.
So like the only thing the system cares about is how much hex is staked. And so like the OA wants to find that perfect balance between like how much it stakes and what the ideal like return.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. Okay. But I mean, still, I guess either way, it may not change the point too dramatically. Like the fact that the OA is it's serving like a critical role in the hex game theory. Whereas with the Shiba token, it was just, an external party, it was Vitalik, but an external party was just given 50% of the supply. Like it's not, the dynamics of that just don't really make sense in the same way that the presence of the OA does in Hex.
There's no ongoing cost to the development of Hex. Hex is a finished product. Ethereum is not. Vitalik stays up at night feeling guilty about how much money he donates to the ETH Foundation. And then he writes articles about how people need to donate more because the funding is severely lacking, right? So that says something about the tragedy of the commons, that there aren't any people, even though the Ethereum ecosystem it has a much higher market cap, is supposedly worth a lot more than Hex or Pulse or whatever. Isn't it strange how there's more people working in Hex probably to improve the different aspects that touch the human side of things, and then to make an even better base layer that will provide security, but without all these high transaction fees. So I think that that definitely says something about the incentive structures as well. And like each of these little seemingly small design decisions or like, talking points, narratives, like it turns out that some of these, especially when combined with each other, are going to make all the difference in the world about the potential of this crypto to succeed where others have failed. And I also think that, so I guess to continue on this scam narrative, so where does Vitalik fall on the three types that we outlined earlier? Does he understand Hex is a threat, so he puts it down? Does he think that it's a scam and get repelled by the 40% promise that he doesn't realize is promised in Hex terms and not USD terms? What do you think?
It's hard to work Vitalik out, hey, because I would love to just completely give him the benefit of the doubt because, he's a busy guy and, co-founder of Ethereum. There's a lot of stuff that's going on. So, I'd like to believe that he just hasn't put too much thought into it. But the problem with that is that like he is generally quite positive just about people building, just about people using using Ethereum and developing on it. And I've never really heard him say a bad word about really any project on Ethereum, and he seems quite happy to, you know, promote meme coins and so forth. And so I do have a big question mark around it. You know, there's part of me that perhaps he's a very smart man, and you know, you'd have to think that he understands what hex is. Or if he does understand what hex is, I think there's a possibility that he's viewing, you know, hex and potentially, you know, pulse as you know, possibly a threat. Or for whatever reason, it's just not something that he wants to have much attention drawn to. So
Yeah, I think that's
yeah,
it because
I'm a little bit cynical. Like I said, I want to believe the best of him, but I'm also just a bit cynical.
well, and we can believe that he's a good actor and believe that he's wrong about Hex
Yeah.
for whatever reason, because I've heard him speak on how somebody asked him once in an interview, how is it possible for certain projects to promise such high returns? And that sounded like code to me for Hex, but could have been
So this was what, so Vitalik
mentioning
had said
something else.
it?
So
So
somebody
Vitalik.
asked Vitalik this in an
Ah,
interview with him, and he like didn't miss a beat, didn't ask a bunch of, you know, and then he answered the question. He said, "Well, things that promise high interest that they can't deliver, usually they run their course and burn out after 6 months or a year."
right. Okay. Yep.
So that goes
Yeah.
back to our thought experiment that there are whales and people in the space who are highly influential, who got the wrong impression early on, who maybe are capable of updating their worldview as time passes, but
Yeah.
they have to be triggered and they have to kind of um, have some sort of awareness or like put some effort to where they've already filtered this out. You know, it kind of
Yeah.
has to come back to them, and then they have to not fall for the next trap that we've set for them to make sure that they don't figure it out, right?
Yeah.
Because it would be super easy to go around and well, I say that, but really, would it be super easy to go around and recruit bigger whales? Because for every whale, you need 10,000 less plebs. But the problem with that is then you're giving up control of something that could change the world. So you're kind of selling out.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, look, it's difficult to tell with Vitalik, like you were saying. It could be that, yeah, he's filtered it out early and now it's just not on his radar because there's, you know, a million tokens on Ethereum and there's stuff kind of coming across his desk all the time. And you know, possibly at some point he may update his worldview, but my impression is that even if he were to do that, it would likely be too late, or he just wouldn't. I just don't think that people who are already powerful in the space really understand what's happening here, and that things are like they have already shifted dramatically, but they're about to really, you know, this is really about to get thrown into top gear here with the launch of Pulse, and I just think that once, you know, by the time it becomes obvious what's happening, it's kind of like ship has sailed. Like it's gonna be
So,
pretty
so
late on in the game.
I mean, you know, the way that I would say it now that it's more clear to me by talking to you and thinking about it, we filtered Vitalik out. He didn't filter us.
Yeah,
How about that?
I like that. I like that.
Because Hex was designed to make new whales, and he's an old whale.
Yeah, that's right. You are correctamundo there, Matty Allen. I love it. Well, should we talk about the sends
So
thing now, or did you want to talk?
so
You
so I
have
think
another
like
topic?
um so another point to make that I want to emphasize maybe from a previous stream that we've had is that my prediction that scams will become indistinguishable. They will evolve to the point of being indistinguishable from reality. And so
Mm,
maybe this has already happened. Maybe the U.S. dollar is the ultimate scam. Maybe because the dollar's changed, it used to be backed by hard assets. They were scarce. Now it's not.
yeah,
But also, I'm thinking about robocalls, call centers in other countries that call up elderly women and men and say, oh, I'm a doctor in another country and I'm like I don't have access to my account, or I've had some bad luck, but let's be romantic pen pals and you can send me money. And this is happening more and more. It's becoming more advanced,
yeah.
and they continue to trick more people, which causes the financial system to. So we had a comment earlier in the stream, and I wasn't able to read it out, but this idea that now bankers can give you trouble if you want to send $10,000 to a crypto exchange,
Yeah.
because that's literally how scammers are offboarding people. They're basically extracting wealth from people through these irreversible payment methods. And so it puts people in a pinch to where Hex might, like to the person who hasn't done their homework and who meets the requirements of not being an old whale, they would have to get through this filter of isn't everything a scam, or isn't this too good to be true?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I do really like that point around, in the future, scams becoming indistinguishable from, the real thing. Um, yeah, I think that this will be true in cryptocurrency. It'll be true in many facets of life. And I think, like we were speaking about last time, just the lengths that people are already going to within the Hex community, like that really unfortunate incident of, was it Karim's voice that had been um, duplicated
Yeah.
and then used to scam somebody? Like that's we're already looking at something pretty high level there, with
And and
copying
then
someone's voice.
on the other side of that, there will be people who come along and it, pretend like somebody stole Kareem's voice, when really they're the scammer. The person who claims to have been scammed
Yeah.
is the scammer. We've seen that once in Hex, where we had somebody in the community acting that way and ended up
Yeah.
leaving because they were exposed. And the crypto grandma got hacked recently.
Yep. Yep.
So yeah, this will continue to be the way, and so that's why we tell people never to share your private keys, no matter who's impersonating who or whom or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, that's right. I think being vigilant is really, really important, and taking security really seriously, I think, is really, really important. I think I saw something, someone I follow tweeted like a really good sort of OPSEC or a security checklist of, maybe the ten top things that you should be thinking about when it comes to cryptocurrency security. And there was, stuff in there around, hot wallets, cold wallets, and different strategies for storing private keys and how to separate, into sort of at least two portions your private keys, and having all these kind of backups. It seems like, if you're kind of new, it seems like it might be a bit over the top, but I think given the level of sophistication of the things that we're dealing with, being methodical with something like that, I actually think is a really, really good idea. I'm not really usually the type to like have a list and like tick things off, but this is like, your future wealth here. So I think
Yes.
it's definitely important for just us to just keep vigilant about that and keep a focus on it, and remind each other and support each other to do that, because we don't want any hexagons losing their funds. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that they will, right? And
yeah,
so it's important for us to educate, and that kind of so I think that also feeds into one of the points that we have about information overload and the order of operations and onboarding people. First, though, maybe we can talk more about okay, so we could talk about onboarding in the future of Hex, and then we could go further into the future where none of us die and have to find meaning in life. But really, I think it kind of all comes together at once, because even when people become suddenly wealthy, they can lose meaning in their life. And this is something that hexagons may be experiencing now, or may be looking forward to experiencing the negative psychological effects of wealth. What do we?
Yeah.
So let's see. I did a YouTube poll. We could look at the data.
All right, let's do that.
Cool. Those of you who are hip know that there's a community tab here on YouTube, and so you can go and vote on all the different questions I've asked over the past few weeks since they turned that on in my channel. And let me share the screen here, and we can see what we're dealing with.
Sounds awesome.
Make this bigger. So among the 216 hexagons who responded to this poll on my channel, I asked, it got cut off, didn't it? Let me see. How do I make it? I'm going to reload it. Maybe it'll show the whole question. There we go. So I asked, have you experienced any symptoms of crypto sudden wealth syndrome, shock, depression, paying off debts, anxiety, insomnia, feeling not worthy, gambling due to guilt, losing meaning from work, having a lack of purpose? Wow. 45% of people, so over 100 people, have experienced one or more of these symptoms of Hex crypto sudden wealth syndrome. And then another 55% are still waiting to have that experience.
Yeah, wow, that's really sobering. Hey, that's, I think, a really, really interesting poll that you've done there, Maddie. And yeah, you know, I guess it's in some ways a little bit similar, but also quite different to, you know, when people win the lottery, for example, and there can be a number of those symptoms that you've mentioned there in your poll happen to people. And so I think it's really good that you're drawing attention to this, because it's interesting how money can really trigger our inner demons in a certain sense, because there's so many very strong associations with money in general. You know, it's obviously like a source of security and comfort for people, and it's you know, your sense of safety is often bound up in money. And so when something like that changes really dramatically, it can create like a cascade of changes in your thinking and in your emotions. And certainly if there's you know, anything floating in around in the background that is in any way kind of tied up with a feeling of maybe not being worthwhile or valuable in and of yourself, certainly I could see how some of these behaviors and thoughts might start to arise for people. And I think it's excellent that we've got our very own Hex therapist here, Mr. ALLin, kind of bringing this stuff up for people and making it a positive thing to share and to talk about and to discuss how we can all manage as a community. Because I think it's also just really important to not feel alone with any of this stuff that might be happening. And just to understand, you know, there's good people around, like, you know, Maddie and myself and so on, who are, you know, more than happy to have these conversations and to talk through how can we best, you know, manage this as a community, again, to make sure that these big extravagant goals that we've been talking about are a real possibility for us, and we don't engage, we don't end up kind of being self-destructive in the face of these big changes that could be happening for us.
Well, and I've stopped working with individual people so
Yeah,
that I can try to build tools to more automatically help a larger group of people. And so the types
awesome.
of information and self-help materials that I bring to the Hex Therapy show every week, that's meant to be your education and entertainment. And then therapy is still up to your local therapist and local 911 emergency line. And that's why in each of the Hex Therapy streams, we link the international list of emergency call lines so that if you're feeling like hurting yourself or someone else, then you can get the help that you need immediately without waiting on those of us who are not on duty to respond.
Yes,
And so I think that
absolutely.
this is so it's a really important question that I'm setting out to create meaning from helping more people in a more systematic way. And I think the first thing that I've realized is that Hex helps people by itself. It's an emergent property. And so if you're feeling the effects of sudden wealth syndrome, I've started to see some overlap between that and the 5 stages of grief. So people kind of go into shock, and
Yep.
then they can have bargaining and
Denial,
denial,
anger,
anger,
yeah,
depression, and then acceptance.
acceptance.
So
Yep.
any of these things, they can throw you off, but also on top of all that, a lot of people don't realize that part of the meaning that they've created and part of their life story has revolved around the struggle to survive, to make
Absolutely.
enough, to have a comfortable life and to build their lifestyle. And so when suddenly the odds change and you've been working to build your business your entire life, and then suddenly putting $1,000 into Hex, that goes up to $5,000, it far outpaces anything you could have produced yourself, right?
Hmm.
So that it kind of steals part of the meaning of, oh, I was really good at doing this one thing, but now it doesn't matter because Hex is still going to be a better investment, is what some people are thinking.
For sure, absolutely. I think they're all really, really important points. And I think, I mean, the most important thing to recognize is that it is a type of grief that you're going through. If you are being affected by these symptoms of sudden wealth syndrome, there is a loss there. There's a loss of, perhaps a certain aspect of your identity. Like Maddie was saying, that there's an aspect that you were tied up in this struggle, and now that the struggle's gone, it does kind of mean that there's a loss there in terms of the way that you were viewing yourself. I think there's also just a loss of, perhaps, it could dramatically change relationships that you have with other people. Perhaps there were some people that you really wanted to get into Hex with you and they didn't. And now you're in this position and they're continuing on in their lifestyle of the struggle. And you used to connect with these people through that. And perhaps now there's a change there. I'm not going to say that you've lost these friends, but there's a change there in the way that you're relating to them and the way that you are constructing these relationships. So that's another big thing, sort of a
Yes.
type of loss that could be occurring for people. And then look, exactly like you said, for a lot of people, your job is really, really bound up in, who you see yourself to be and what your identity is. And if you are reaching a point where you don't need to do that job anymore, then there's a loss there as well, because there's so many things that again, so many relationships, so many habits, so many routines, your sense of purpose on a day-to-day basis may have been bound up in your job. And so I think it's important to first give yourself time to grieve these things. It's okay to feel a
Yeah.
loss around these things. That is really, really important, and to recognize it and to name it, and to just let
Yes.
it be there. That's so, so important. And I think giving yourself time to do
Yeah.
that before moving on to step 2, which I think is
Yeah.
way more positive and way more helpful, way more
Yeah.
hopeful. I think it's really important to do step 1 very well.
Tell yourself, of course, I feel depressed. Of course, I feel guilty. Of course, I feel shocked and confused. Of course, I don't feel like myself, because these are all things that are normal to feel under the circumstances of sudden wealth syndrome. And, this is an adjustment, a big change, right? And so whenever change occurs in life, then people need to do the work, the self-care, and the psychological preparation in order to make that lifestyle adjustment, and to discover what the meaning is going to be now that it's not being forced on you in the same old way.
Exactly. And therein lies the opportunity, right? Because part of the grief is also recognizing that some of the things and some of the ways that you were constructing meaning in your life were, to a degree, illusory. They were there as a matter of necessity, and as a way to keep yourself, motivated, to move through this struggle. But I think some deep questioning also will likely arrive after the grieving process, where you start to question what it is that now that you have this freedom, right? Now that you aren't bound to do these things in the way that you were doing them before, what is legitimately meaningful to you now? And that's a really, really important question. Like, if we're going to be given this opportunity to really do anything, what is it that is purposeful for you? What is it that's meaningful for you? And that sometimes can be scary to confront, because often we don't know. This could be a very big question mark, and it could be a very overwhelming question, to kind of be confronted with a little bit of a blank canvas, and to not know what's next, and to not know exactly what to do anymore. That's a hard thing to do, but it's also just incredibly freeing. There's so much growth that can go along with it. And you also have this opportunity now to begin to focus on these extravagant goals that we were speaking about earlier, where you now have some power in your T-shares to start to direct things in a different direction, and to build something new, and to make it better than it was before. And so this isn't to take away from that grieving process, or to say that it's going to be an easy thing. There will be some pain involved in this, but there's also
it's gonna hurt so good.
It's gonna hurt so good, right? It'll be painful, but it will be. I think what you'll end up finding is a much deeper sense of meaning in what happens next, because this is like on your terms. This is what you're choosing. This is so much more salient, and I think over time, it's a process. You will arrive at that destination, but just be gentle with yourself and take your time. It's we all have our own time frames with this stuff, and yeah.
Excellent guidance, and I am hoping that I have a sneak peek into the reaction that a lot of people are going to settle with. And I think that it's no accident that many of us will end up gravitating towards making the world a better place, and specifically onboarding people into Hex, because we will feel a sense of gratitude, and we will feel maybe even a sense of guilt that we lucked into this thing, that somebody else, whether it's Richard or somebody in the community, somebody else, did the work in order to get us into this awesome thing. And then I think a lot of people will find meaning by paying that forward, by using their time and energy and monetary resources to spread this tool to other people, to allow them to buy their financial freedom and cause a chain reaction.
Yeah, there's a real importance to that. I definitely can't downplay how important this whole journey is going to be, and the pivotal roles that we're all going to play. So I think exactly like Maddie said, it'll hurt so good. There'll be it will be so worth it. I do believe any negatives that we might experience kind of going through this will be so worth it. And I can only encourage you to just stay the course, to just stay with us here. And it's going to be wild. It's going to be I just think in 10 years from now, the crazy stuff that would have happened, the crazy changes that we would have made, and all the success that we'll see from this group of people, and the satisfaction in the way that we're going to be able to help people that come into contact with us. I know myself, I'm already thinking about who, there's people I've tried to onboard onto Hex, and I'll keep trying with them. But there's certain people that I come across in my life already now where I'm thinking, like, it's so important that this person be given this opportunity as well, and I just know that this is, there are certain people that I'm supposed to kind of pass this on to as well. And whether that's us kind of, continuing with our selection process with Hex, and now the people involved are having a great impact and shaping the people that now come on board. Whether that process is still playing out, it's it to me, I can feel the weight of importance of doing that with certain people. And I wonder if that's maybe an experience you've had as well, Maddie, whether there's people where you're like, I just know, like, this is like kind of like the perfect thing for them.
Yeah. So I've been analyzing my own onboarding behavior and the behavior of the people around me who I want to solve this problem. The problem is not all of the people that I care about in the world are already onboarded into Hex. And so when I do these types of public services where I try to educate strangers, then always in the back of my head, I'm thinking, I wish it was easier to onboard people in my personal life. It seems like I'm leaving them behind, or that I'm not working as hard as I should. But the truth is that this is much easier, in fact, than onboarding people in my personal life, because this is a group that has self-selected that they're interested in these topics and the angles that I bring. And then we cross-promote with all the other people in the Hex community. And so everybody gets the right flavor of Hex for them, which it turns out is all the same thing, in my opinion. So I've got some insights to break down with you today to see if we can start to crack the code on the psychology of onboarding.
All right, let's do it, Maddie.
So, so the bad news is that we can't educate everybody about Hex to onboard them.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because they don't care. Right? And so you said, well, why doesn't everybody care about their financial freedom and about, if they're going to spend their whole lives working, why wouldn't they do a little bit more work in order to understand Hex, which could be a system that would free them and save them decades of their life, why wouldn't they do that?
There's so many reasons. Hey, one I think could be people are they're afraid to leave what's familiar. I know that's a big part of it,
Okay.
and also I think we touched on it on a previous stream, just the general current of, education and information that people are exposed to in the mainstream just has this effect of kind of funneling people away from asking these questions. And there is sort of a degree of brainwashing that's kind of happened there. So I think there's that. And humans do have this weird way of like making life hard for themselves, for whatever reason. I think for a lot of people, they prefer the struggle as well. It makes them feel, I think, more valuable or more worthy somehow if they're doing it the hard way, doing it tough.
People assume once they've done things the hard way long enough that that's the only way. If there was an
Yes.
easier way, they would have found it by now.
Yes, and then that's a huge thing to be confronted by as well, because if you're a bit older and a little bit further on in the game, realizing that there could have been this way simpler way to do things, and now you've perhaps spent your life in a way that wasn't so economical or efficient, or it was just harder, but it was not necessary that it was that hard. That's a difficult truth to confront as well, I believe.
Your whole life has been a lie.
To an extent, yeah.
Nobody wants to
Yeah.
hear that.
Yeah. Like that's
Nobody.
a huge, yeah, I think people do, I think, unfortunately avoid hard truths about certain topics, and what they've spent their life doing. That's a big one. It's a really, really big one. So I think there's some psychological reasons why people might just kind of avoid it as well. Also, fear of the unknown. Like, the system as it is, it provides like routine. People kind of know how things go day to day. They know what it's like, and then having something like this handed to you, it gives you this sudden wealth syndrome, and there's all these like sort of difficult emotions that go along with it. And I think people are sort of avoiding that aspect of it as well. Like, there's this whole other unknown thing, and is this going to put a lot of like responsibility on me to like do something with it as well? But if I don't do it, then I know that life will be comfortable. It'll be a routine. It'll be something that I can, I know what to expect from it. And
I mean,
I don't have to expect too much from myself. I think there's maybe a bit of that too.
there are so many traps in
Yeah.
the ways of thinking that people are already accustomed to, that it's no wonder that people don't have the capacity as it stands to gain the understanding that we have. Maybe it's
Yeah.
not palatable to them. They're not interested in it. It's cognitive dissonance, perhaps,
Yep.
is part of the equation. And so it's like, well, if this new information doesn't integrate with the old information, then it doesn't exist, is what the mind says. When there's cognitive dissonance, it means you just, it's like you could see proof of something, but you would ignore it because it does not compute with the beliefs that you already have.
Yeah, that's amazing. There's so much awesome stuff in the chat here that people are contributing to this.
Oh, cool.
So what have we got here? So Brianna says, I cast pearls everywhere indiscriminately. Who are you to decide who is worthy of wisdom and who isn't?
Ah,
I definitely agree with that. I just find that, yeah,
pearls. Yeah.
the majority of people don't really respond, and there are moments where I meet someone or I know someone, I just know they will respond. Maybe that's more sort of what I was trying to say, but I definitely get where you're coming from. So I think so Axis Alive said I think just in regards to these barriers that people might have to investing in Hex, he said genetic barriers as well, and how you were raised. It is difficult for a person to outperform their ancestors without significant effort, because those bad habits are passed down to you. And I think that's actually quite insightful.
It's a slightly more technical term of epigenetics, means that how your genes are actually influenced by the level of oxidative stress that your environment provides to you. So literally, your genes can be changed. Remember, your genes are just a code of which proteins are made. And that code can either be on or off. And so the environment always still has to provide the proteins, but it also the environment has to decide whether the switch is on or off. And so in epigenetics, it's looking at how the environment interacts with the genetics to flip those switches on and off and to provide the right or the wrong proteins. And so when people are living in poverty, then the oxidative stress on their tissues and cells actually it can decrease functioning and then cause damage to the genetic code that's then passed on. And so without taking a supremacist even, which I'm not implying that Axis is, but unless you're talking about the axis of evil, which I don't think you are, the axis of being alive, and Axis is an awesome member of the community. So that does affect behavior in these ways that are often mischaracterized. And so it's perceptive that you've pointed that out here.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I definitely think epigenetics has a lot to do with why people kind of continue to behave in ways that aren't necessarily conducive to their best interests. I think there's some aspect as well of perhaps what Axis was talking about as well is there's almost like a generational kind of trauma that I think has happened, with certain groups of people as well. I mean, this might be getting a little bit too macro, but I think there's been a number of studies that show experiences that your grandparents have been through, for example, are going to be affecting outcomes in your life now. So if you're, in an extreme example, if your grandparent had been involved in the Holocaust or war or
Great Depression,
or for example, in Australia, we have something called the stolen generation with the Aboriginal population, where it was basically just an entire generation of children removed from their parents and then put into orphanages or sent to white families, and just kind of the way these things kind of filter through behavioral patterns as well. And so and I think you've touched on this before as well, Maddie, but when you're in stress or in trauma, your behavior tends to become a lot more rigid. It's much more difficult to change because there's a sort of it's just sort of part of the symptom of being through trauma, is that there's this fight or flight response, and so you become very vigilant, you become very sort of fixed and rigid, and you're in this survival mode, and it's much harder to make a change. And so for some people, being presented with something like Hex could actually be triggering a kind of fight or flight response as well. It's a stressful thing at a base physiological level as well, that people may not be completely conscious of. So
because you can't change your behavior once you've made a promise to yourself through Hex. You can't change that economic value, so you can't go and change your mind the next day and say, well, I didn't mean to stake that for 15 years, so now I'm going to spend it tomorrow. It doesn't allow you to do that. So it locks you into your moment of clarity, no matter what your environment then throws at you. And so you could be either very happy or very sad with your decision making, because it locks you into that that stake. You lock yourself. I
Absolutely.
mean, um, it,
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
so that definitely is going to have an effect, and so I think that there's a lot of reasons that people are not going to get into hex ever.
Yeah.
Um,
Awesome chat, guys, by the way. That's great. Like there's so much. I mean, there's so much. I can't even keep up with it, but you guys
yes, there's
have
that's
so
what
much
happened
knowledge and
last
yeah.
time. Last time
Yeah.
we did a stream together, there were too many good comments. Like it
Yeah.
was impossible to.
Yeah. But yeah, we see it and appreciate it. So just know
Hell
that
yeah.
love what you guys are saying.
Um, now, so instead of taking the point of view that like we can only save the smart people, I want to re-examine that assumption, because that's the first assumption that we could get to is like if people it's your fault for not being open-minded enough to get into hex, and then you become this bitter wealthy giving person, and you miss out on the opportunity to teach a man to fish instead of fishing for him. And so here's where we might be able to change our thinking, or maybe start to admit some cracks in the current hex onboarding system. So what else goes wrong when we try to onboard people other than they don't care about our supposed solutions to all the problems in the world that they don't want to hear about?
I do think there is like some aspect of it just feeling too complicated for people. So I have had people just like really just not understand the T shares and the staking and how the system functions. And so I think us having a way to like simplify that for people in a way that kind of hits the points clearly without like I think if we can all figure out a way to like explain it to a kid, then I think we'd have a great shot of maybe piquing people's interest. Because like if you're trying to educate a child, like first they've got to be interested or they're just not going to listen. Like there's got to be something about it that's kind of interesting or exciting and gets them involved. And then secondly, obviously, if there's too many steps or it's too complicated, like they're not going to be able to absorb it. So I think if we can find a way to like position things in a way that's like a bit exciting, a bit interesting in a way that draws them into like a story, and then presents them with some simple facts about the system, I think that that's probably going to be a way to overcome that hurdle. I don't know, what are your thoughts,
I
Maddie?
think it's I think it's
Yeah.
time for us to use the power of psychology to um, you know make
Come
it
on board.
easier for people, a
Yeah.
lot easier.
I do. I mean, I do think that people respond to stories really well. I definitely have noticed that. Like if there's a narrative that we can create, like I guess before we get maybe too cerebral about it, helping people to be part of the story. Be part of a story. I think is inspiring to people and motivates them to listen a little bit more, and maybe gives them the motivation to then dig into some facts that might be a bit harder for them, or it might not be something that they're used to thinking about, but then at least there's that motivational element present. So that's definitely something I've been sort of thinking about, like what's the story we're presenting, and how can people feel involved in it, as we're talking to them.
So if you had to ask one question, you only get to ask one question to somebody you're trying to onboard. What question do you ask? If we're being Socratic about it and we want them to come up with the decision instead of us deciding it for them.
I've got like 5 coming to mind. What's your biggest worry about money, perhaps?
Now their frame is oh, I should be worried about money?
Yeah, no, I don't think it's the right one. Well, like what's your biggest dream? Like what would you love for your life that could be a start. Like, I mean, I guess you're right in starting with something positive, something inspiring. I don't know. What do you guys reckon?
I think that this question of like how to market or how to start a conversation with a goal in mind of getting the person to act financially, it's comes down to sales tactics,
Yeah.
right? This is we could think of it as sales, or we could think of it as a behavior change. We want somebody to change their behavior and what they've been doing. Maybe they've been saving money in the fiat system. Maybe they've been spending too much on their lifestyle. Maybe they have been gambling on the stock market. But everybody is already doing things with their money. For them to change that would take some convincing.
Got a couple of zingers here. Russ says his question would be, do you want to work for money, or do you want to have your money work for you?
Oh, that's a good one.
I actually like that. I think that's kind of cool. Yeah, I mean, look, from a psychological perspective, I think one thing that I've learned, which, look, I'm always open to questioning things, but people will tend to do more to avoid pain than to gain pleasure. So I know, like, with writing copy for like websites, for example, a lot of the training suggests that you should make the pain point really obvious to the person. You should actually make them really uncomfortable. Yeah.
Is that to get their attention or to get their action?
That's like step one of like a funnel, basically, to get them to then basically click a button and buy something. Now I'm not saying that I'm promoting sleazy sales tactics or anything like that. And obviously, when you're dealing with real people in your life, it's not necessarily the right way. But in terms of like the common accepted knowledge, that's kind of like an initial thing that is done in your like sales and copy world. And again, I'm not saying that's the right thing. I'm just saying that's sort of accepted knowledge.
The more I've thought about it, the more it brings me back to this idea that like there's misinformation in the body of knowledge that we have about advertising and how to change somebody's mind, because there is so much incentive in the world to brainwash people and then to sell these brainwashed people to the highest bidder of an advertising attention auction, aka the internet. The ability to search on the internet, the ability to get information in the first place has been corrupted. This social networks that have used psychologists to make their websites or apps addictive to people, to the point where they literally need to build in ways to make themselves less addictive, all while they continue their happy monopoly, avoid regulation, and continue to sell out humanity to the highest bidder of things, selling you things that you don't need, giving you less value, and extracting your soul.
Go off, son. Loved it.
So
that was great.
So if these are the people teaching us what works, they're the same people who are selling us the courses, the strategies, and the ad space itself. So RG3 actually has been the one who really drove this point home for me, that it doesn't matter how many pizza advertisements you see throughout your day or how much is spent on pizza advertising. At the end of the day, when you get together with your friends and somebody says, this is the best pizza, it doesn't matter what you were already going to do. It matters who you trust and what their real life experience has been.
Yep. And I 100% agree with that. And I know this is something that like Wales has brought up a couple of times, that like this is why we don't need the influencers. This is why we don't need, you know,
Yes.
the crypto marketing machine, because all that matters is that we tell our friends, or we tell people that we come into contact with, or we, you know, spread the knowledge with people that trust us. And that is the beauty of the network effect. Is, you know, each one of us are a little node, and we could have one little node coming off us. We could have 100 little nodes coming off us, and then each of those nodes can have. And this is how like exponential growth happens. So like I agree with you. I think trust is really really important. And like in terms of what's going to be sustainable and actually work for both our good and the good of the person that we're bringing on board, you know, trust actually just helping to educate people, you know, helping them with, you know, I've just found what's worked with my friends is just having chats with them, letting them ask questions, and walking them through some of the technical difficulties. I think that's been a big part of it as well. Just holding their hand step by step, like sitting and staking with them and helping them with gas fees, and if their transactions gotten stuck and all that sort of stuff, and just sort of being that person that they can rely on. I think that's been like really like effective with my friends. And so I think once they're already like interested, all that stuff is fantastic. I think for me, the only part missing is like, what is that? How do we connect that first dot to the point where they're then asking the questions, and they're then interested enough to want to overcome some of these hurdles.
I may have a solution to this onboarding problem that we have, and
I'd love
I,
to hear it.
I would love to share part of the solution with you now, and then show you the full solution here very soon in the next hopefully 2 or 3
Oh,
weeks. Although, as
mysterious.
we know, software is notoriously late, but um, so with that being said, the psychological part of things, which is part of my job and part of why I need other people's feedback, is that's something that always has to get figured out first before it can get coded. So my insights, or my obsession with the onboarding problem. First of all, why is it important? So it's important to onboard people because otherwise, another project could come along that has bad actors and evil whales, and could take our place because they could realize how good we are and copy us. I don't think it's likely that they will catch up, but I think that that's out of any risk in Hex to like our potential to be the next world reserve currency. Literally, Hex is so good. I don't worry about the Hex side of things. I worry about the human side of things, where the smart contract meets the people. That part probably needs the most work, because it's the smart contract part that's a finished product, and it doesn't by its nature can't be improved anymore. And really, let's look at Bitcoin. Bitcoin was not successful in becoming popular to where the majority of people use it. And it still went up 6 million X, even with people not being locked into it, time locked. Yep. And even without any pumpamentals, with the entire system of miners dumping the price every minute of every day for its entire existence, with a tragedy of the commons, with errors in the code, with now centralized actors coming in and taking it over to some extent. Like, it's so Bitcoin failed with the adoption mechanics, and but I think it proved how important and how much incentive there is, the potential incentive, right? And so
and just the pure power of the network effect again on full display there, because a lot of that growth happened before there was any marketing machine or influencers or any of that stuff happening. It was just people going, hey, I've got this like internet money, like let's mine it or let's send it to each other and buy pizzas or whatever it was in that beginning. It was just that it was just people telling each other.
Yeah, yeah, and it wasn't. Bitcoin maybe didn't change people um, as much as Hex will change people, because in Hex you're playing a game with your future self that becomes real over time, and so it's got a whole extra dimension. The fourth dimension is unlocked in Hex, whereas the fourth dimension like is another way for you to fail and dump on yourself when you sell Bitcoin too early and then you regret it. And then it's like, that wasn't as rewarding as it could have been,
Yeah.
because it's over. Either you held it or you sold it.
Yeah.
You know, like there's nothing in between us. I mean, if you talk about dollar cost averaging out or something like that, but uh, there's no fourth dimension in that. It's simply you making decisions in real time. So anyway, so I think the problem that we're going to run into sooner or later, each of us, is that we're going to run out of people who are enough like us that they can be onboarded. That we are going to run out of people who are such extreme nerds, or or who are, I mean, getting people to part with their money and like to do something new is like, it's no easy task, especially when that. So like there's a security element to this as well. Like if I go around educating everybody that I know about how crypto works, then I put my own crypto at risk if I don't really trust those people. So there's like there's an element there as well that it's kind of a barrier. But the biggest barrier I see to onboarding now is information overload. There's an information gap between people in Hex who have been incentivized to learn more about it and the people that they're onboarding. And it's very hard to put yourself back in your shoes to when you didn't know about Hex. That you were a different person when you didn't know about Hex compared to when you're an expert community member. So
yep.
So we've talked about all these game mechanics that are built to keep people out of Hex, except the chosen self-improvers. And then what, right? What happens when we run out of people who listened to Richard before he started promoting Hex? Like, okay. Yeah. And then like we could get a little bit more people who are critical thinkers and like have enough time because of the lockdown to like pay attention to something. But the world's going to keep changing and the world's going to open up. And then actually people are going to have less time and mental energy to like understand Hex. So it's probably, so like, and Pulse, like you'll see the direction I'm going with this is going to end up being super bullish on Hex. But I think my experience has been that I can get diminishing returns when it comes to the amount of energy that I put in to onboarding people because of the method that I'm using to onboard people is the naturally, and it's been rewarding for me to become an expert and to be on the cutting edge and the frontier of understanding the emergent principles of Hex. And so, but if I even start to like think about somebody brand new, then my brain like seizes up and oozes out of my ears, right? Like,
yeah,
that's really hard for me to do. And
Just to back up what you're saying, Shape Cryptos just said, my friend who is in Hex was a no coiner before. He said it was like learning a new language getting into crypto. So there clearly is
interesting.
this huge gap, like for anyone who's, I mean, even for people who've been exposed to crypto, it's already a leap. But there's clearly like a huge gap if you've never been involved before.
The thing that's going to be different about Hex than any other crypto is that there's a huge population of stakeholders who have the right incentives to promote Hex once they have the right tool. And I believe that the right tool is going to be one that is engineered to stop people from over explaining Hex. That
Okay.
in order for people to promote my new onboarding tool, they will it will interfere with their ability to explain Hex.
Whoa.
So
Okay. That's cooking my noodle.
yes,
Tell me more.
so we basically we need to design an experience. So somebody, let's say, opens up a web page or an app, and then they get something that's true but not complicated. And so because what happens currently is you make this huge intellectual pitch to somebody, and at some point they get lost, and maybe they say it or maybe they don't. But at the end of the day, if they're asking questions and not getting lost, then once the conversation's over, you spent all your energy explaining what is money, what is Bitcoin, and what is Hex, and why everybody on the internet is wrong about Hex. And you're speaking to an audience that has probably got tons of connections to other cryptos and lots of people explaining why their crypto is better. And so you've got a bunch of noise and a bunch of complexity, and then you don't make the sale, or it just kind of it fizzles out for all those reasons, right?
Yeah.
But even if you get them past that point, now that all right, shut up about fix the money, fix the world, like shut up and take my money already, and then that's a whole process too, right? And so not only do you have to educate somebody enough for them to understand why this is a good idea to invest in, then it can take days or weeks to onboard them because the fiat system puts so many barriers in place. It's not like it just works automatically to buy crypto in the first place, right? And now you're like, well, no, you can't buy Hex directly. You have to buy Ethereum, or you have to buy USDT. You have to get onto an exchange. Well, which exchange should you use? Oh, well, it kind of depends how much money you have, because then there's all these different fees, and we have to time it right because the Ethereum fees might be really high. And by the way, you have to do KYC AML, which means you have to send a selfie to the exchange. And that, this is an exchange you haven't heard of. So you're giving up your bank account number and your identification to something that's got the name of crypto, which usually means like dark and mysterious and confusing. So it's no wonder that Bitcoin and the Hex community in general expends so much effort with such little success of onboarding.
I think you make some very, very compelling points. Yes, absolutely. I think aside from the kind of intellectual gap, there's this real there are all these technological barriers to entry as well. And I've definitely noticed that in my experience with onboarding friends as well. Like, even having to explain which wallet to use and where to do the swaps and why it's better to do a swap here rather than there, and how to send a transaction, and the transaction's going to cost you money to send, and just the whole myriad of things. And I think as we were trying to get some friends in, it was like the height of the ETH gas crisis, and having to explain why it was going to cost you like $150, but don't worry, it'll be worth it. Like, it's there I definitely agree with that technological aspect. And that's after winning the intellectual battle. But I guess just to play devil's advocate, I do think you're right when you say that we are over intellectualizing it. I think we are all kind of nerdy. We all like numbers and charts and all that sort of stuff, and so we speak our own language when we speak to other people. But to be honest, like, I think the real the friends that ended up signing up have just taken a look at my wallet, and I'm like, look, this was X amount when I put it in. This is how much it is now. Number go up. Do you want number go up? And like, that seems to be the most effective thing. And I guess just like watching Richard
Correct.
recently, like,
Correct.
he's like, just like swanning around. He's like Louis Vuitton with these like crazy watches and stuff. And I think it's probably going to be like equally as effective as it like making the intellectual case, if not more, which in some ways is a little bit like disappointing. But it's like, I just think that's, like having a bit of fun with it and like playing that number go up card, I think is most likely to be the thing that works in the end, which again is pretty hysterical.
Yeah, totally. It's okay, good, because as you're hitting on the same conclusions that I've drawn, then that's increasing my certainty, instead of kind of me telling you what answers I arrived at and then not getting your line of thinking and independent kind of analysis here. So yeah, so having a personal experience of number go up technology, that
Yeah.
is persuasive to people.
Yeah.
I have also arrived at the same conclusion.
I also found something else that seemed quite persuasive to people, was to explain it to them as, you are going to be a better version of a Bitcoin miner. You're going to be more profitable with less overheads, less hassle, than a Bitcoin miner. And we've just got to go through, these X amount of steps to do it. But you don't have to go out and buy a whole bunch of equipment and invest in ASICs and have millions of dollars in order to be profitable. You can just buy some hex and stake it, and you're going to do better than a Bitcoin miner. And people kind of like that business case for it as well. Like that kind of like, okay, I'm making like an investment here and I'm like the next Bitcoin miner. Like that, I found that to be quite persuasive to people as well.
I think that the mining idea, like, I was first exposed to that in 2017 when I was importing ASIC miners from China and selling them on eBay, to people who, were enthusiastic about this idea that they could run a supercomputer and it would print them money. And even though the numbers didn't add up, and many people knew that there was no guarantee that they would even get their money back, doing the work and having the physical to digital experience, like all in one stack, that's what made Bitcoin real to them, was having that horrible, screeching piece of junk, cooking, their power bill and losing them money in the end. That's what people got excited about, I remember, in 2017. And so making that comparison, I think it definitely onboards that crowd, except it's missing like the physical aspect. And
Yeah.
so conceptually, like, getting to the idea of like being a money printer or like replacing people who are hurting the environment, or like just explaining that this is one way that we secure the network by time locking the coins and then getting rewarded for that. Like that's similar to what miners do. I think that is much less of an explanation and much more closer to what would appeal to some people compared to a lot of the other things that you could try to explain in Hex.
Yeah, like it's true. It's like it's a specific kind of group of people that appeals to, but it seemed like a very it seemed like a very simple case to make. Like I just found like in a couple of sentences, like a person who's open to that idea. In a couple of sentences, like they were kind of won over. Like the money printer go brr, like again, like a just a real simple like number go up, money printer go brr. Like these two things I've just found them to be the most successful thing. Like if I'm being perfectly honest, and I agree with the fact that not having like a tangible physical representation of it might be off-putting to some of that crowd. But I have found that the Staker app itself has almost been enough to bridge that divide to an extent, because it's kind of like, hey, you're sort of just using your phone to do this. This is, rather than using a big ass ASIC miner or whatever, it's all nice and elegant and clean in your supercomputer in your pocket. Here's the app. Here's the smart wallet. It costs a little bit of money to turn it on, and I think even you'd think that would turn more people away, but it's almost like that gives it a little bit of legitimacy as well, the fact that it actually costs sort of a transaction to turn the smart wallet on. And then people do almost have that physical reminder, like, hey, I'm like printing money with my phone. That's like what I'm doing. So I think that's like, like I said, it won't win everybody, but there's a group of people there that's like kind of simple enough and makes enough of like a intellectual case for them without going too deep with it that it kind of works. So
that definitely is in the right direction of things to have an app or multiple apps, because we're a decentralized organization of people who have that as one of the core principles. And so always thinking about how can we have more than one solution that is continuing to approximate or cover some of the space that's needed in order to onboard all types, I think is extremely powerful. And having more options for people in order to spread their risk when it comes to different software or website implementations, and then having as much transparency as possible, I think also is something that I definitely stand for, and is something that I think could create a lot of positive vibes in the community. And so that's why so I think that basically an implementation of an onboarding tool that stopped people from over intellectualizing, but also there's this other problem that I've noticed, that the decision making about your hex stakes, it comes at the moment of highest mental fatigue, or kind of greatest removal in time from when you're first hearing about it. So for example, if I talk somebody into trying out Hex, then there's a couple ways that happens. One way is I do it for them, and then they have the experience of doing it, but then it's not a high, like it takes a while, but then also it's like, it's not really rewarding the type of behavior that would be ideal. And then
I agree.
The other option is to try to carve a simple enough story that's also complex enough to get them like in agreement or like considering putting money in, and then they have to do the fiat onboarding, which is inevitably going to take days or weeks, and then they now it's time to get hex. Now they have to time the gas fees. Then they finally get the hex, and it's like a bummer because you're not even done with all, like now you have the hardest decision making in my opinion, which is like how long are you going to lock this? And so without thinking and without like having the most time and attention from the person who's onboarding you, you're going to choose the worst amount of the worst length of time imaginable, which is like 2 years. So like right when everybody else is figuring out in the next 2 years that they should be only doing 15-year stakes, then your stakes are going to come out and you're going to be paying the most compared to people who came in after you. So,
yeah, I just don't let anyone do that. I just like I think I've been pretty because I have that trust with the people that I've onboarded. Like I've been pretty direct with them, and I've just said, look, if the amount of money we're working with now is an amount of money you don't need to touch for 15 years. Let's just look at a compound interest like calculator, just understand how this works, understand that the biggest gains are going to be at the very end of this thing, and like we just need to if this is an amount of money that you don't need, and you want the biggest possible gains for it, I just tell them we do that one first, and then we can talk about strategizing and all that stuff later. And it has actually, like, surprisingly, has pretty much worked with everybody that I've done that with. I thought that people would be really hesitant to do like a big long stake, but interestingly, I think when you make the kind of compounding argument to them and just sort of show, like a general sense of how that might work. I know it's not exactly the same as traditional compound interest, but to sort of just give them an idea of like what that looks like. It's weird that's kind of just worked. Like maybe it's because they are fatigued, like maybe they are like worn down at that point and they're like fine, yes. But yeah, like that's what I've been finding.
And so I think basically my design goal is to get it to the point where you can send 2 text messages and the person gets onboarded.
Maddie, if you can do it, you're a damn genius. You're a damn genius.
What's the first text message that or whatever message that you send to somebody? So the first one is going to be a mega testimonial video. And so there's this cool thing that you can do with a YouTube link, and you can say something like a YouTube link and then put on the end of it equals seconds, question mark, dot, hashtag, all these weird symbols, and then equals 3,000, and it'll start 3,000 seconds into the video. If you're on desktop, there's a tool built into the browser that allows you to say, start from this point in the video. If you're on mobile, they don't give you that option, which is confusing. But so the first task that I have that people could help with is to get members of the Hex. So who's the target audience of Maddie's therapy app? That is the first goal of the therapy app is to increase onboarding, which is good for people's mental health because Hex has the emergent property of making you better at saving than you would have been. So,
who is this target audience?
The target audience is people who know someone who has gotten rich from Hex or has had Hex help them.
Yeah. So someone in the chat actually said, I can't remember who it was, just send a staker app screenshot as like your first message, which is kind of funny.
That would maybe only work for the select audience of people that you trust to see your balance or something. But in fact, to reach a larger audience, you might be able to make a 30 to 60 second testimonial video, and then you can choose what you would want to share or not share. And maybe we could even edit out some parts so that you're saying, Hex helped me. It, allowed me to have more financial security. It is paying me trustless interest. It's, helping my mental health. It's allowing me to be a member of this community that's really exciting to me. It allows me to save for my future, to learn more about, this and that, like whatever somebody's personal testimony is. The first task is going to be to get these stories put together so that the first link that you send when you want to onboard somebody in 2 text messages, the first one is going to be, hey, check out my cameo in this video. And then the video goes to the part where you're featured. And then after 5 or 10 or 30 seconds of like your testimony, then it goes to the next person who presumably your friends would not know, and they would continue to watch another 5 to 60 seconds of the video to realize that, hey, this is working for somebody I know and people I don't know.
This is very, very clever. You are a smart man. I have noticed that you have been calling for testimonials on Twitter. Should I be suspicious that it's in some way related to what you're currently discussing?
Well, I have publicly stated that I want to make a compilation video. And so, yes,
Amazing.
There will be more utility than just getting, one channel views or something. I would love people to post this all over the place on every channel there is. And I'm excited about how some parts of the presentation are going to be even more impressive than I'm describing. But so this is giving you
That's
an
awesome.
idea here. And so it would be using the tactic of seeing this inspirational video. You don't have to watch the whole hour. And then blocks can be added onto this in the future. So this becomes a dynamic tool that's ever growing. It's a kind of perpetual, testimonial that is happening in real time, or more people can add to it. Step 3 is really just to repeat steps 1 and 2 with the next group of people. So the future target audience, remember, is people who know somebody who did well in Hex, or Hex helped them. And so if step 2 or whatever gets us to, now we have a group of people who only has to wait a short period or a medium period of time, and then they get helped by Hex, then that creates more virality that way. So,
Got it.
I've also got these 10 or so celebrities who have said kind things about Hex or Richard, or how mental health can be programmed into crypto. As a part of my first ever initiative in Hex was to create the Hex cameos, movement. So, so those could be included in this mega testimonial.
Love it.
Of course, I'm just calling it mega because the word mega is cool, and it's like you have a meta study is studying like what works between studies, and then a mega study is studying a group of meta studies. So
yeah, like I'm just sort of thinking this through and putting it in the context of how sales and stuff happens in with other products, and I really love the idea of organizing the resources, like having this testimonial video, and then I guess perhaps if people are looking to go further, either the Hex website or some sort of site or page that has been specifically designed to just give people the real sort of simple blow by blow of Hex. I think that'd be great to have that organized. But I wonder if there is some way to obviously we're not going to be running this on Facebook or anything like that, but you can split test and do all that sort of stuff, and look at what actually is more effective for onboarding people. And I wonder if there's a way for us to run it a little bit like a research project and kind of look at what actually what actually works, because we're going to have our theories, and we're going to have the way that the resources are put together, but are there certain tweaks that could be made? Is there a certain length of the video that's going to be more beneficial than not? And I wonder if there's, that might be getting a little bit too technical, but I wonder if there's some way of once phase one is done, and this is out in the world and working, if there's some process that we can go through to like further refine it as well. But I definitely think you're on to something here.
This is entertainment, not research. We're not regulated. Yay.
Yeah.
So like already there have been a handful of people who have submitted their testimonies, and there was a huge group of people who did it for Coinbase. And so that was Johnny Chaos's movement that he did just a week or two ago. And so I am calling on all Hexicans who have been helped by Hex, either the community or their price appreciation or anything. If Hex has done anything for you, don't wait until you're retired and living on living on an island that you've bought. You're allowed to make more than one testimonial, and so this is just going to be the first of, I hope, many testimonials that you'll be able to give throughout the coming months and years. This is up to you, because even though I'm saying it, if you don't make it happen, then if your voice and your action taking doesn't occur, then it's not going to happen. And I'm good. Like, if this fails, like, whatever, like, I'm doing my part, so you need to do your part. And so everybody needs to make their testimonial video.
I love it. Well, you heard the man. Get testimonying. Wait, so, what's the verb for that?
Get testifying.
Get testifying.
A hashtag Hex challenge and or at Maddie ALLin, ALLin, however you want to pronounce it. It's spelled ALLin. And you can get on Twitter and go ahead and post your video. I believe Twitter caps the time length of a video at 2 minutes and 12 seconds or somewhere around there. So it's going to have to be shorter than that, which is good news. Baby steps. Doesn't have to be a whole Hollywood production.
Incredible. I love it. I think it's a great idea to just give people some simple tools that they can use, and a real simple process. And like you said, we don't have to complicate it, overthink it. It doesn't have to be so messy. That's really good.
We actually have to stop people, because people will my prediction is that I could tell people, don't overcomplicate it, and they'll be unable to control themselves. That people in the Hex community are so well educated and intelligent about economics and crypto and human behavior and everything in between, that because Hex is too good, it will fail, is my thesis here, that we have to throw a wrench in the process of people over explaining, otherwise they won't be able to help themselves. So
I love it.
I don't know, that's not a good word, but like, give people the freedom to not overcomplicate things, I think is the idea here. So how exactly do we do that? Because just making a testimonial video is not going to undercomplicate things. It's simply just going to cause the target audience to say, okay, check, I know somebody who did well in Hex, and then I saw a couple other people, and then I got the second link, or I stopped watching because the world opened up and I'm out doing things. Like the person, we're going to assume that the person is not going to watch the whole video, or it doesn't matter if they don't. We've accomplished like the psychological purpose of the first step. So step 2, how do we stop people from over explaining it? Well, the second link is going to take people to a game.
Oh, I wasn't expecting that, Maddie. Tell me more.
No.
I see what you did there.
It takes them to a game that they win. And then the game ends.
So what's the game?
The game
Is it the
doesn't
game of-
matter, but
is it a
let's just
game of
say like
hex?
so like let's say that it's a coin flip or something. So the person guesses what the coin, no explanation, just random luck generator, or whatever it could be titled. Whatever. Somebody told me that they got rich off Hex, somebody that I know. Okay, there was a video, they were in it, whatever. Click on the link. Okay, like, what's this?
That would, yeah. I see what you're doing. I see what
This
you're
isn't
doing.
crypto. Like, this is flipping a coin, or this is like a game. Like, okay, well, there's a juicy button that says press me, so I'm going to press the button. Like, what else am I going to do? I already came to this site. Like, it wasn't that hard to get there. This was sent by somebody I trust, and I'm curious enough to like, have the page load and like, see what it is at least. Like, I could be easily turned off at this point, but at least we got this far. So you press the button, and it's not all making very much sense, and then you win. Right? So what have you won?
Well, it's unclear to me at this stage what I've won. I've won the
Excellent.
game,
Perfect.
but I do see that part of what will be happening is it's going to be like interrupting a pattern for people. Like, so, and so this is just me perhaps reading into things, but this may be part of your devious plan to kind of prevent the overcomplicating of Hex. Is this what it's designed to do?
I'm not sure why anybody would go into explaining economics or money or Bitcoin or Hex if if they know that the goal is to get somebody to watch their appearance in a video and say Hex worked out for me, click link 2, and then link 2 gets clicked, and there's nothing in there that you need to know about Hex or Bitcoin or anything else. It's not relevant at this stage, because what we're actually going to be doing is backing people in instead of trying to force them in front first. So we're going to back people in, and the question we're going to ask is not, do you want to get rich? Not, what are your dreams? But the question is, how much bonus do you want that you just won, and how long are you willing to wait for it?
I like it. Okay, so I'm a person who has received these 2 text messages. So I've gone through, I've watched the cameo, I've seen my friend, I've seen a couple of other people. I think this sounds pretty cool. I could make some money. Number go up. Great, I'm interested. Tell me more. And then I receive the second message, and I go along and I play this game. I win the game. I'm told I have some kind of bonus, and I'm asked how long I'd be willing to wait for this bonus.
Correct. Okay,
I'm interested. There's a small part of me that wonders if it's a scam, because it does give me a little bit of a reminder of like early internet days with like spam emails and stuff like that. But I'm not saying
Sure.
I'm not. This is just my initial reaction. But I think all of this can be solved, and it wouldn't be a problem if. So what happens from there? Like, how do they get from the game to like the Staker app? Are you trying to suggest that they would go back and speak to their friend, and ask for help in setting up, or is there like a link from the game that takes them to like the Hex website? What is
What,
there,
so
is there a final
so
part of it?
what we need from people before they start to do anything with crypto or with their money is we need to first get them to decide how much bonus they want and how long they're willing to wait for it.
So you're saying
We
do the last step,
force them to
do the
make
last
that
step
decision.
first.
And if they don't make the decision is made for them because you just wanted a game, and it just so happens that Hex pays 20% more every year that you lock. So you've already won 20% more per year. And how much of that bonus do you want to give up?
Yep. So they already have ownership of it. It's already sort of theirs to lose.
You press the button, you won the game.
I like it. It's devious, in a good way, in a very good way. Yeah, I think it's innovative, and I don't think anyone has tried anything like it.
The best part is that now they're going to get stuck because they've made the decision or been told what amount of bonus, which is a reasonable amount. It's not 1000x. It's not 40% per year. It is 20% more per year, which is what Hex actually promised. So if the interest rate is 10% in Hex per year, then what the T-shares do is they give you 20% more. Just like at a bank, if a bank is willing to give you 1% to lock for a year, then every extra year is 0.2% more, because 20% of 1% is 0.2%. And so if you lock for 10 years, then that would, or so if you lock for 10 years, then that would be, what would it be, like 6% or something like that? I can't. So no, it'd be 2% because, or 3%.
How long?
Okay.
How long?
So 10 years, you're getting 20% more. So that's divided by 5. Anyway, like, despite the problem with like doing mental math on a live stream when my noodles already cooked,
I would have helped, but I didn't know what the initial thing
so
was.
if
But
you get 20%
it doesn't matter.
more per year for 10 years, how much is that?
20% more per year for 10 years. Isn't that like 200%?
Okay, so then it's if 100% is represented by a 1% interest rate, and then you get a 2x on that, then I think that equals out to like 3% total, because it's 200% bonus plus the original 1%. So what T-shares do is the exact same calculation. So except it goes, instead of for 10 years or 15 years or longer, it's like up to 15 years, which is why if you want to buy a T-share and you do a 15-year T-share, it's a third of the cost of a one-day T-share, because you get 300% bonus. And so that math works out. And so it's really, without even knowing what the percentage is going to be, you could still promise people that they'll get 20% more every year that they lock. And so that's the metric that we can zero in on, as it doesn't sound outrageous, works in the real world, matches up with the bond market exactly, and it can be promised without making promises that are part of a dynamic system. So, so what we'll be doing is asking people to pick, how much bonus do you want? 0%, and you don't have to wait. So that means they're simply getting liquid Hex. Or you can lock for 15 years and get a 300% bonus, or you could pick some spot in between.
I look, I'm definitely on board with the idea for sure.
They don't have any crypto at this point. They just made the decision. So instead of making the decision about how long to
At
lock
the
at the
end.
end of the
Yeah.
onboarding process, they do it at the beginning of the onboarding process. They get inspired, they make the decision. Doesn't matter if the decision changes a week later, they still have the tool. It took them 10 seconds to flip the coin to win the game and then to get presented with the choice that we need them to make. Step one, win the game. Step two, make the choice. Step three, make the stake, which has a sub step of getting crypto. And so it's by design that people will get stuck here. Now, what you're implanting in their head is that they don't have control of their money, which is true. So they've made the decision they want to do a time lock with their crypto, but now they get stuck at okay, the crypto parts worked. I know what I want to do with the crypto. I know which crypto I want. Why can't I move money from my bank account into Hex immediately? I thought that was
Yeah.
my money. Why is it taking a week? Why do I have to route through all these other coins? Well, then you're creating a problem with like the financial system, not with like the fiat system gets blamed for not the crypto side.
Yes, I definitely I definitely see where you're coming from. I think for sure it's going to like I think the process for sure is gonna exactly like you said, it's gonna get their interest and motivation up. Then it's gonna give them that sort of positive experience of winning the game, get them to make a decision. And then there's like you said, there's a gap there, and there's a couple of dots that they're kind of going to be left to connect um, for themselves. And not necessarily everybody will come to the like will immediately kind of work out the money's not mine. Like I think that it's gonna create questions for people, which I think is really really good, and it might lead them back to asking question of their friend who has sent them the link as well. So I've definitely found as
There,
well what's
uh, there's some parts I can't tell you yet that it will stop that from happening. Um,
okay.
it, the,
Is
the
that
only question people will be able to ask is why does it pay 20% more per year that I lock? And the answer will be because that's how savings bonds work.
I'd be
Period.
very intrigued to see how you stop them asking a question of their friend.
Okay. Well,
I'll be I'll
yeah,
be I'll be keenly
it's good stuff.
awaiting. I'll
Um,
be keenly awaiting.
and so now at some point later on, the person comes back and then they complete the task with the fiat money that got held up because the fiat system sucks. And so we've backed them in a way that blames fiat as it should be instead of fiat blaming crypto. See, because if you go to Coinbase and you haven't made the decision of what you're doing with your crypto, you haven't even gotten to that screen yet, then all of a sudden it's crypto's fault that you're not able to onboard. It's you can't even see where you're trying to get to yet. And by the time you get there, you're so fatigued, you're so angry at crypto, you don't even know it. And then but there's so many ways to lose the magic.
Yeah. Well, again, I think if you can lead them to like come to that conclusion of just see that reality and see it from the right point of view, like you're saying, rather than I guess for a lot of people, yes, it is. It's like this is crypto's fault that this is so complicated when they're first coming in and they don't understand why it's so complicated, and there are a lot of questions around that for sure. So I guess definitely if you can like kind of point them in that direction to understand why the complication is happening, I think it's a really cool idea.
So the questions that the person in Hex who is onboarding their loved ones, the questions that they'll get will be, how do I use Coinbase? How do I get money out
Mhm.
of my bank account? Um, and there will be really good tutorials and resources to answer that without getting super complicated. It'll, but again, this key part of the person has already made the decision, and now they're gonna follow through on it or not. But it's preventing people from getting lost in the
Mm-hmm.
information overload,
Yeah.
and then now what's meant to happen next in the dynamics. So the next step is the person completes their stake, and then you leave them alone for 3 months, and then they figure out one day they check their balance and they realize that that it's gone up so much because everybody's in the hex community has been being able to use this simple strategy to onboard. Even people onboarding somebody with $100 or $200 is all of a sudden gonna create much greater scarcity than there is now. And so then the person is going to check back. Now they've had contact with success. They did something that caused number to go up. Their behavior is rewarded. Now they're ready to learn about Hex. Now they can watch the live streams. Now you can talk their ear off and they won't be able to get enough because they've been motivated, they've been incentivized, they've been rewarded for the behavior of saving for their future self. They can see the future. They understand the basics. Now we can build on, and then there's so much more for them to experience because guess what? The rest of the story is even better than the first part.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, I mean, I love how you've like flipped the process on its head. Like I can hear you've really thought about it, and you've thought about like all of the steps that someone needs to take and all of the barriers that are there, and you've kind of reversed that process and caused the effect of, well, we're hoping that it will cause the effect of people making the decision first and then kind of coming into the system from that point of view, which immediately puts people in a very different mindset. They're much more open, they're much more curious, and they've already had that positive reinforcement to engage with the system. So I think that's really really clever, and I think like ultimately, I mean, basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to simply just like facilitate the network effect, but just make it more efficient. So rather than it just kind of being this messy process that sometimes takes and then sometimes doesn't, I think you're sort of trying to nail out, okay, what is the recipe of actually like facilitating, like what's going to help this thing to be sticky in people's minds. And yeah, like I think it's got legs. I think I think it's a great idea.
I had sent $27 worth of Hex 6 months ago to one of my buddies, and we logged on just last weekend, and it was up to $400 in 6 months. And then the onboarding process was easy, even though I had done the work initially.
Yeah.
Well, he had done the work to actually set up the wallet, write down the seed words, that sort of thing. And so, there was investment on both sides. And so this process should be even, I think, even better. And the cool thing is when I tell most people, yeah, I'm making an app, then they're like, oh, yeah, like, so maybe we'll be able to test that out here in like 6 months to a year or something. Well,
Absolutely.
all I can say is that, like, I think the universe is conspiring to make this happen almost immediately, much sooner than I could have dreamed, because it just so happens that the Hex community is full of exceptional geniuses who may or may not have already been working on many of these mechanics and are, again, like, I don't believe that this is just luck or chance. I believe that the universe is conspiring to cause me to work with other people in the community in a way that's gonna just amaze us all. So
that's really cool, man. Yeah, I am already seeing the success of it. There's I think it's very likely that it's going to increase the efficiency of that onboarding. No matter what that percentage is, it's going to be an improvement, and that can only benefit all of us. So, thank you for thinking about things in such detail and taking the initiative to take the time, and obviously, like you said, taking time off work to benefit the community. I'm looking forward to seeing all these testimonial videos come through, so the first part of the process can get kicked off.
Oh, it's amazing. Even just like the first handful that I've seen, just like really inspire me. They're so focused. They're coming out and really reminding me of why I'm trying to bring this to more people, and why I'm so lucky to be a part of this community, and it's certainly your contribution and helping me think through this here. I'm a verbal thinker, and so if I don't have somebody to chat with about things, then I can't even think about it. And so it's been very helpful, and I'm excited to do another stream with you when I can do a big reveal, because I like the parts that I've been able to share so far, maybe like 10% of like how good the other parts are, but I don't want to like give the competition or give the competition too much head start or anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's your thing, and it's yours to reveal as it comes to fruition, and when it works for you, absolutely. But yeah, I know I'll be waiting excitedly to hear more details, and if there's any other contribution I can make, even if it's just being a sounding board to talk through some of the ideas, I'll definitely love to do so. And I just, like I said, I'm just anybody who is putting in so much effort and clearly wanting to make a positive contribution to the community, I'll always support and be there to facilitate that any way I can. So
are you great stuff. Are you willing to do a testimonial video by chance?
Don't you worry. There'll be an excellent testimonial coming through for sure. Not a worry on that.
Coinbase testimonial was excellent.
Thank you very much. Yes, I had to rush it through because I was taking a walk in my lunch break, and there was this dude with like a whippersnipper. Do you call them whippersnippers over there? Like the little things that like edge your grass, like edges and stuff that cut the grass on the edge, but they're not the full-on lawnmower. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No
idea. Whippersnipper. Wow, I guess that's just an Aussie thing. A whippersnipper, mate. There was a anyway, it's a really noisy thing that edges lawns, basically. And it just felt like everywhere I went, this whippersnipper was like following me. So I had to just like find a bench and just like sat down and just like did it as quickly as I could. So I was like, I don't even know what this is. I'm just going to post it now. But I'll make sure I'm in a much quieter space for okay, Hex Mac, you know what I'm talking about. Yes, a whippersnipper.
A weed whacker. Okay.
Yeah. That's so funny. I've never heard the term weed whacker. That's hilarious. But I'll make sure I'm in much more hospitable sound environment for the testimonial vid for sure.
It doesn't have to be perfect. Just whatever you can do.
For sure.
So.
For sure, absolutely.
Cool.
Awesome stuff.
Yeah.
Great stuff, Maddie. Well, hey, I might
time flew by, and I know we're pretty much out of time here, so I wanted to thank you again for doing the stream, and hopefully we won't have another 4x in the price before we do another stream together.
Absolutely. Or maybe hopefully we will. I don't know.
Yeah, that's right. Cool.
But yeah, look forward to the next one for sure, Maddie, and all the best with the project. And I am excited to see the testimonials.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much, and thanks to the audience. Take care, everyone. We'll see you next time.
See you guys.